Chapter 22:12. Counterattack. Why did the Nine Heavens Flame have such an ability? That was because Ling Han had split it out so that it had become one of his divided souls, giving it independence. Otherwise, if it was just a source power inside Ling Han's body, how could it possess such an ability? Thus, it might seem as if Ling Han splitting the source powers of heaven and earth out was weakening himself, yet it had allowed the Nine Heavens Flame to become stronger. This was also a kind of confidence for him. He had a firm belief in his own strength. Ultimately, external powers could not be depended on. Ling Han, are you still unaware of propriety? Huang shouted harshly. Ling Han ignored him. The Nine Heavens Flame was decoding the profound secrets within the inextinguishable burning flame. Once it succeeded, it would be able to easily absorb the might of the flames, unlike now, when it was only depending on the height of its essence to repress it. Furthermore, after decoding this kind of profound secrets of regulations, the Nine Heavens Flame would be able to possess a corresponding power of regulation, and that was a great strengthening factor for it. For Ling Han, this was a good thing as well. He could also observe and study it through the Nine Heavens Flame. You are too arrogant. Huang was furious. He was already surrounded by his inextinguishable burning flame, and Ling Han actually still dared to ignore him. What kind of disdain was this towards him? He charged over and sent out a punch, flame soaring to the heavens. Ling Han, too, shot out a fist. Boom, the two fists collided, flames rose in all directions, and lava sprayed out. Huang roared, shooting out punch after punch, determined to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han countered carelessly. Huang was indeed very strong, but if he wanted to suppress Ling Han, he was being delusional. It might be difficult to decide who was stronger between Huang and the Rain Emperor, but there was absolutely no way he could be Ling Han's match. Ling Han did not make a harsh move, because he was very intrigued by the inextinguishable burning flame. Huang spoke of it so proudly, probably because this inextinguishable burning flame was not easily obtained. Thus, since it was here already, Ling Han would naturally prefer to slack off and take a shortcut. In essence, the Nine Heavens Flame was forcibly decoding the profound secrets of the inextinguishable burning flame. This speed was too slow, so Ling Han could only continue to exchange blows with Huang, unwilling to easily defeat this opponent. Of course, Huang was indeed strong, and Ling Han too would need to put some effort if he wanted to defeat him. Huang used all his powerful moves, celestial technique after celestial technique channeling from his hands, and boosted by the inextinguishable burning flame, his battle prowess was astonishingly strong. Even Ji Yutong would probably not last over 100 moves in front of him. This was a monster that had been nurtured in the Imperial Void sect. Ling Han mused ruefully that this was as expected of the Imperial Void Celestial King, who was the disciple of a heavenly Venerate and one of the strongest Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings. Even the disciple that he nurtured could be so strong. However, if Huang was already so strong, then what about Huang? This guy. Could it be that he was a member of the Sealed Emotion Palace? It was very possible. There was no rule that determined that a disciple of a heavenly Venerate could not come and play around here. After all, if one were to be overly subjective and disregard the outside world, then even if he had the guidance of a heavenly Venerate, his accomplishments would still be limited. Cultivators should battle all the way until they became the strongest. Ling Han's thoughts wandered idly, and after who knew how long, the Nine Heavens Flame suddenly sent a message to him. It had already obtained all the secrets of the inextinguishable burning flame. Ling Han spread open his palm and looked, and the Nine Heavens Flame had turned into an ancient seal, but compared to before, this seal had another stroke to it. Though it was pitifully tiny, it did indeed exist. This was just like how a single petal had already bloomed on a flower, and now the tip of the second petal had slightly extended. Though it was still very far off from blooming fully, it was still a start, after all. Understanding dawned on Ling Han. When the flower's 9 petals had bloomed, the Nine Heavens Flame would have reached the Ninth Heaven Celestial King tier, but this was the pinnacle because the apex number of heaven and earth was 9, and it could not be surpassed. As long as you were still living in this galaxy, you would have to adhere to the regulations of heaven and earth. Ling Han frowned. Then, how did an illegitimate child like the heavenly venerable tier came to be? Everyone was inferior to regulations, so how were they supposed to break through the regulations? Could he go to the foreign realm? When this thought arose, Ling Han shocked himself. To say nothing of how he was going to pass through the connection point of the two realms, even if he could, the regulations he cultivated would be absolutely useless in the foreign realm, and it might be that his strength would be even weaker than severing mundane tier. Then, wouldn't it be just treading on dangerous ground? How exactly could he leap out of the pond of this heaven and earth? Ling Han couldn't help but feel vexed, and a feeling of annoyance rose up in him. Haha, do you now know fear? Hu Yen smirked coldly. He thought that Ling Han was frowning because he was afraid. Ling Han narrowed his eyes in a glare. I'm currently irritated, so are you asking for a beating? With his anger stoked, he immediately began a fierce counterattack. Boom, the 9 heavens flame unfolded, instantly expelling the lava, and opening up space for Ling Han's movements. What? Hu Yen mouthed this word, his face filled with disbelief. Even though a 5th severance could be considered monarch tier, and would definitely become a celestial king in the future, even when both were celestial kings, there wouldn't be a massive disparity in battle prowess. Why? Because every cultivation level that had been cultivated would affect the battle prowess of the celestial king, such as dividing 9 souls, or such as the mystery realms that he had formed when he had been in the Immortal Palace tier. Why did Hu Yen look down on Ji Yutong and see him as trash? That was because how Ji Yutong had cultivated his mystery realm was trash in his eyes, and the gap between their battle prowess was also incredibly obvious. Monarch tiers would have to cultivate every single cultivation level to perfection. Otherwise, even a monarch tier could degrade to become an emperor tier or a king tier. So what if he was destined to become a celestial king? That would only be trash among celestial kings, or he would have long since been killed before that. Ling Han was unconcerned, and only sent out his fists in a mad barrage of punches. Once he could ignore the inextinguishable burning flame, Hu Yan's battle prowess would have declined greatly, in relative terms, so how was he supposed to stop Ling Han's burst in attack? Impossible! Hu Yen finally called out. He had not gained his inextinguishable burning flame with his own power, but it was rather the Imperial Void Celestial King that had moved personally, and helped him to suppress the murderous and destructive power within the flame, which allowed him to obtain it after studying it for 90 years. This kind of fierce flame could even match the might of a Celestial King. The prerequisite was that he himself had already reached the Celestial King tier. This was also the basis of his arrogance. How many people in the Immortal Palace tier could reach this kind of height? Yet he had only managed to trap Ling Han for a while, and then the latter suddenly showed his divine might, and unraveled the inextinguishable burning flame. How was he supposed to believe this? There is nothing that is impossible. In my eyes, you are only trash, so what would be all that difficult about defeating trash? Ling Han asked calmly, flames exploding on his fist, and forming an ancient and majestic seal. Pang, pang, pang. At first, Hu Yen could have lasted about 100 moves before defeat, but because his willpower had weakened, and his fighting spirit had also declined greatly, how was he supposed to stand off against Ling Han like this? He was thrashed harshly, and yowled continuously in pain. In just over a dozen moves, Hu Yen collapsed on the ground. The lava that covered the ground no longer bubbled and surged, having lost its source, and was quickly suppressed by the formation here, turning into nothing. Ling Han looked towards Qia, and this fiery woman couldn't help but take a step back, a powerful fear in her expression, as if she was worried that Ling Han would beat her up as well. Go back and tell Jia Lan Ling Han picked Hu Yen up, and you as well. Go and tell Huang, if they want to pay me a visit as guests, I welcome them. But they need to show some sincerity, and not let minor characters like you two come and bother me. Scram. With a toss, Hu Yen was immediately thrown off a far distance away. Chapter 22:13. Huang moves. When Qia saw this, she involuntarily shrunk back, and hurriedly turned and fled in a panic. Ha ha! Ling Han laughed, then sat down, and continued sipping his tea. Neither the Empress nor Hu Niu took it to heart. Though both Jia Lan and Huang had already advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, and had the might of a Supreme Monarch tier, there was no possible way that Ling Han wasn't a match for them. But this was the Saintly Origin Academy, so it did have some rules. He was sure that the two of them would not dare bully them so brazenly. However, after only a while had passed, a gigantic spirit palm descended from the skies. The palm was as sparkling and translucent as jade, multiple seals incredibly brilliant, and was descending on an unmatchable course. Ling Han hurriedly grabbed the two women and used void space, moving rapidly. Boom! The massive palm descended. Boom! The four abodes of Ling Han and his group were simultaneously turned into rubble. Wah! Ling Han also spat out blood continuously. Thankfully, he had hidden the two women behind him, and they had not suffered too much impact, unlike Ling Han, who had been touched by the shockwave created by the massive spirit palm. This was too astonishing. It had just been the shockwave, and actually possessed such might. An ascending origin tier elite had moved. This is a warning. No one can humiliate one of my Huang's people. A voice rang out calmly, bearing a boundless dominance. Huang. The person who had moved was actually Huang. He, too, was only a first secret as well. A supreme monarch tier was indeed powerful. Ling Han nodded internally. It was no wonder that Huang could stand equal with Ji Wuming. If he were to fight with Ji Wuming, who was superior by a cultivation level, there was no need to question the result. He would be dying very tragically. He hadn't even appeared, and merely sent a palm strike from afar, and it was enough to inflict light injury on Ling Han. If he had not reacted in time, he would even have been severely wounded. Furthermore, this person was extremely overbearing. This was Saintly Origin Academy, but Huang dared to make a move on Ling Han so brazenly, using his superiority to bully Ling Han, and completely ignoring the basic rules. This kind of arrogance was also a rarity. I will give you 3 days to come to our Huang Alliance and report, and become an odd jobs worker. Otherwise, the next thing I destroy would not be your abodes. Huang's voice rang out again. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink as forfeit, humph, just asking for your own suffering. The voice ran out like thunder, with absolutely no reservations, as if even celestial kings were really below his notice. Ling Han's expression darkened. Huang's actions had exceeded his expectations. Why did this guy dare to be so arrogant? First secret, he asked menacingly. Just because he was a cultivation level higher than him, he could be so overbearing? Fuck, did he think that Ling Han would not break through as well? Huang, is it so fun to bully a rookie, someone whose cultivation level is lower like this? Another voice rang out calmly. Xueqi, you dare interfere in my matters? Huang's voice raised a notch, his dominance blazing even hotter. This second person was actually Xueqi of the 4 great supreme monarch tiers. It was no wonder that he could stand off against Huang. Hee. Xueqi merely laughed calmly. I just can't bear to see it. If you want to fight, then I would not mind turning into a battle Buddha to spar with you. The winner of the last battle was not decided, so we should come to a conclusion this time, Huang declared boomingly. Come fight. Xiao, a bright golden figure suddenly soared into the skies, and another figure shot into the air in quick succession. Boom! Dazzling light burst on the horizon immediately. There was clearly an endless distance, yet they could still see it clearly. The 2 great supreme monarch tiers had already begun their battles. Ling Han was surprised. Why had Xueqi stepped out for him? Could it be that he, too, wanted to recruit him? No one knew exactly who had won in the battle of Huang and Xueqi, but Huang made no further mention of telling Ling Han to become an odd jobs worker in the Huang Alliance, which showed that he had not defeated Xueqi, at least. However, Xueqi actually paid no further regard to Ling Han as well, which was quite surprising for Ling Han. After waiting another 3 days, Ling Han decided to pay a visit to this Xueqi, and see what kind of character he actually was. He went alone, and arrived in front of the abode that Xueqi was residing in. The doors to Xueqi's abode were wide open, and a good-natured-looking young man stood at the side of the doorway. When he saw Ling Han approach, he bowed slightly, and said, So young Master Han has arrived. Lord Buddha's son has waited a long time. Please enter. What did he have up his sleeve? Ling Han strode into the abode. This was a completely different world. It had used a secret technique of space. From the outside, it did not look very large, but it was not the slightest bit small on the inside. There were lotus flowers planted all around the abode. Some were ordinary, and there were also 5-leaf silver lotus, 9-leaf golden lotus, 18-leaf purple lotus, and so on. Fragrance wafted from the lotus flowers, spreading far. When he walked deeper into the abode, There was a pure white lotus in a lake. The flower was about 3 meters in size, and in the center, a bald monk was seated, dressed in golden Buddhist robes. Ling Han glanced at him, and suddenly felt as if his soul had been sucked out of his body, sinking into an indescribable darkness. He was shocked, and hurriedly guarded his spirit and heart, and only then did he manage to pull his soul back. Xueqi, one of the 4 great supreme monarch tiers. This guy was really too extraordinary. You would like to ask why I helped you? Ling Han had not spoken yet, and the monk was the first to speak. Ling Han nodded and asked why? There was absolutely no relation between them, so how could there be such kindness without any reason? Xueqi smiled slightly. Can't it be that I intervened because I saw an injustice? Ling Han smiled as well and said, though there is that possibility, I still think that there is a deeper reason. Xueqi looked at Ling Han for a while, and then said, that's right. Someone asked me to move, and give you a hand. Who? Ling Han asked. That person told me not to reveal their name, so I am sorry. Xueqi bowed slightly. Ling Han was curious. Though there were many people that were willing to help him, who had so much weight that they could ask Xueqi to move. He truly could not think of who it could be. As he thought this, he said, no matter the case, I still have to thank you for your help. Xueqi smiled and said, however, helping you with this, I have indeed paid a heavy price. He did not avoid the issue, and pulled apart the front of his Buddhist robes, and there was a shocking palm print on his chest. Huang's heaven and earth domineering fists has reached great accomplishment, he said as he pulled his Buddhist robes back. This person comes from the Sealed Emotion Palace, and is indeed not to be underestimated. The Sealed Emotion Palace. Ling Han's heart shuddered, and a few of his doubts had instantly been resolved. Why was Hu Yen willing to listen to Huang's lead? That was because the Imperial Void sect itself was subordinate to the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable. And why did Huang dare to be so arrogant? That was because a heavenly Venerate was backing him up, and even the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings did not dare to interfere with his affairs overly much. Xueqi dared to move, not because he was braver than the Celestial Kings, but because if it was he that interfered, there was no possibility it would cause a heavenly Venerate to move in retaliation. In a battle of equals, to say nothing of a supreme existence like a heavenly Venerate, even Celestial Kings would not be interfering. Otherwise, this kind of disciple would really be too weak, so what was the point of taking him as a disciple? This is a time immemorial pill, which is slightly beneficial for healing wounds, Ling Han said, then with a toss of his hand, he threw a pill bottle at Xueqi. Xueqi grabbed it, and couldn't help but be shocked. He exclaimed, this is an excellent grade of healing pill among 3-star alchemical pills. I never thought you would actually possess such a treasure. It is actually a 7th refinement at that. This time he was really stunned. Chapter 22:14. Who had helped? 7th refinement was relatively rare even among 4-star grandmasters. However, for a 4-star grandmaster to concoct a 3-star alchemical pill, and had cast 7th refinement on it at that person was too idle, wasn't he? I concocted it, Ling Han said smilingly. He had done him a huge favor, so he did not mind revealing some of his trump cards to the other party. Xueqi was even more astonished. If Ling Han was only a 4-star grandmaster, even a 5-star alchemist would not have taken it to heart too much. After all, he was a supreme monarch tier, and would definitely be capable of becoming a 9th Heaven Celestial King in the future. In that case, was there any need for him to be concerned about a 5-star alchemist grandmaster? But Ling Han had another identity. He, too, was a supreme monarch tier that had attained dividing 9 souls. That was terrifying. The world actually had such a prodigy. Han Lin, I have underestimated you, Xueqi stated calmly. Ling Han chuckled and asked, how is Huang's battle prowess? Very strong. Xueqi looked solemn, and then smiled. However, he has also been blasted by my eternity tap, so his injuries are definitely not lighter than mine. This smile was filled with confidence and pride. It looked like this monk had not yet been freed from human desires and passions, and was still filled with ambition and competitiveness. Eternity tap. Ling Han suddenly recalled that when he had joined forces with Ji Wuming previously against Yulan Fenghua, Ji Wuming had used a secret technique that caused Yulan Fenghua's expression to change drastically, and he also exclaimed the words eternity tap. Could it be that Ji Wuming had some relation with Xueqi? He was struck with a brainwave and said, "It was Ji Wuming who asked you to help." He said these words with a tone of certainty. Xueqi faltered slightly, and then smiled. "I never thought you would have guessed it so quickly." Thoughts flew in Ling Han's mind. Ji Wuming was a reincarnated ninth heaven celestial king, but his identity before reincarnation had been guessed by Xu Yaring and Tang Minglong, yet Ling Han did not have the slightest idea. This extremely violent and murderous guy, Ji Wuming, was actually a member of the Buddhist sect. Hold on, there were only a total of 3 ninth heaven celestial kings that had emerged from the Buddhist sect, but 2 of them had been overseeing the Buddhist sect all this while, and only the founder of the Buddhist sect, the ninth heaven celestial king, was rumored to have vanished. However, no one knew if he had actually died, or was presently cultivating in seclusion somewhere. Now he should be able to confirm. Ji Wuming was the reincarnation of the 9 Lights ancient Buddha. No wonder. Now that the 9 Lights ancient Buddha had spoken, Xueqi would naturally do as he commanded. This was a command from his ancestor. With this time immemorial pill, the recovery time for my injuries would be sped up by about a month or so, estimated. Xueqi laughed loudly. Then, I will go and find Huang for another spar, and drive him crazy. Their strength was equal, and previously neither side had won. However much time Xueqi needed to recover, Huang would probably need around the same amount of time. Yet now that Xueqi had a 7th refinement time immemorial pill, his recovery time would be greatly expedited. When he sought out Huang for another battle, should the latter accept or refuse the challenge? If he accepted, he would definitely be defeated in battle. If he refused, Xueqi would mock him. Ling Han couldn't help but smile as well. Huang had bullied him, and he was still unable to avenge himself at present, so he was glad to have Xueqi use this kind of method to cause Huang some displeasure. Furthermore, there was also some of Ling Han's contribution to it, so it could be considered that he had avenged himself slightly. Ji Wuming was really an interesting character. He clearly would be able to match Huang himself, yet chose to delegate the task to Xueqi. Was this deliberately done so that Ling Han would not have to be grateful to him? Ling Han shook his head. Ultimately, a great battle would break out between himself and Ji Wuming, and he had a feeling that if a new heavenly Venerate could emerge in this heaven and earth, then it would definitely be either himself or Ji Wuming. No matter how strong Xueqi, Huang, and Jialan, whom he had not met, were, there was ultimately something they lacked, and Ling Han did not think that they could rise up above the rest. Ling Han took the chance to ask Xueqi about some matters of the 9 Lights ancient Buddha, but Xueqi behaved with great propriety. He was very upfront with whatever he should say, but he did not spit out a single word about whatever he shouldn't. After a long while, Ling Han's understanding of the 9 Lights ancient Buddha was still stuck on the level of legends that were known to outsiders. He knew that Xueqi would definitely not speak, and thus thanked him, and left the latter's abode. At present, 6 supreme monarch tiers had appeared in the academy, but there was no doubt that Ling Han and the Rain Emperor were the weakest. They had not yet crossed over into the Immortal Palace tier, and were completely unqualified to stand off against Ji Wuming and the others. I should go and break through to the Immortal Palace tier, Ling Han murmured. Like the Severing Mundane tier and Dividing Soul tier, breaking through to the Immortal Palace tier would also require going to a specific location, but what was different was that breaking through to the Heaven Soul, Earth Soul, Yin Soul, and Yang Soul would require going to different places for all of them, and breaking through to the Severing Mundane tier required going only once, and while Immortal Palace tier was the same like Dividing Soul tier, wherein one would have to go to an Immortal Palace tier mystery realm every time they broke through to the next cultivation level, they could repeatedly go to the same location to completely construct all 5 mystery realms. Thinking of this problem, Ling Han couldn't help but ask Small Tower, is there some cultivation level above 5th secret of Immortal Palace tier, like 5th Severance or Dividing 9 Souls? And I thought you wouldn't ask. Small Tower laughed. It seemed like this guy was treating him with disdain again. Ling Han shook his head. I knew that you would speak sharply. Did you think that you would hurt me with just a minor blow? Small Tower did not speak flippantly again, and said, the mystery realms in the human body are not just limited to the 5 organs. There is a 6th organ. Ling Han faltered, and then gaped slightly. What you mean is that there is a total of 11 minor levels in this cultivation level? Dividing Soul tier was already mad enough. One could only reach consummate level after cultivating 9 minor levels. But the Immortal Palace tier was even crazier as there was a total of 11. If your maths was passable, that would be right. Small Tower did not forget to continue treating Ling Han with disdain. However, there is no restriction of Immortal Palace tier mystery realms, like you would have to go here for this cultivation level, and go there for that cultivation level, and there is no time limit to the time they are opened. It paused and then continued. You have the 10,000 times acceleration effects of the Black Tower, so it would not be very difficult for you to cultivate all 11 mystery realms fully. In probably just several billion years. Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. Several billion years? That was too long, wasn't it? Thankfully, the 10,000x acceleration effect of the Black Tower was indeed strong enough. After conversion, he would only need several tens of thousands of years in real time. Counting off on his fingers, if even Immortal Palace tier would need several tens of thousands of years, then how long would Ascending Origin tier take? And there was also the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier. How many years more would he need to be qualified to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier? The invasion of the foreign realm was close at hand, or the heaven and earth would not have been so urgent, either. Did he have that much time? Even so, there was no way that Ling Han would settle the matter just by cultivating 5 mystery realms. Only if he had cultivated every single cultivation level to perfection would he have hope of breaking through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. Even if he was slightly remiss, it would be imperfect. Otherwise, Ji Wuming would not have needed to reincarnate and cultivate again right from the beginning. Alright, I'll study first how the first mystery realm is to be built. Immortal Palace tier meant to construct mystery realms in one's own body. But how was a mystery realm to be constructed? They would have to go to a natural mystery realm and be enlightened, drawing on the power within to complete the construction. Hu Yan, for example, had drawn on the inextinguishable burning flame to refine his heart into the first mystery realm inside the human body. Ling Han's situation was more special. There were too many regulations that he had cultivated. Thus, he had to think about which mystery realm he should go to refine his own first mystery realm. Was every cultivation level the same or different? The best option is to use the regulations of time to temper. In that case, after building 5 mystery realms, your physique would also evolve into the greatest eternity immortal physique. Small Tower paused, and then continued. Then after refining the 6th organ, your physique would be improved further, becoming the greatest eternity everlasting physique. Chapter 22:15. A Special Mystery Realm. Past, present, and future are eternity, while everlasting is superior to yin and yang, Small Tower said calmly. Refining the 11 mystery realms with regulations of time can allow transcendence of past and present and linking to the future. Ling Han sighed. I don't know the details, but this is very awesome in short, right? Of course, Small Tower declared proudly. Can Hu Niu and the others also construct 11 mystery realms? Ling Han asked again. Yes, there is no rule that says a 4th severance cannot attain dividing 9 souls. However, without even attaining the 5th severance, wanting to attain dividing 9 souls would naturally be as difficult as ascending to the heavens, Small Tower said. There wasn't the slightest change in its tone, and this was also the reason why Ling Han was unwilling to bicker with it. It was basically a dead person, so it wouldn't get angry at all. Then, would there still be hopes of becoming a heavenly Venerate? Ling Han asked hopefully. Small Tower scoffed and said, even if you can cultivate the 5th severance, dividing 9 souls, and 11 mystery realms to the pinnacle, whether you can or cannot become a heavenly Venerate will still depend on luck. Throughout the ages, there have been innumerable prodigies. Do you think that there were few people like you? There were indeed very few, but at least one would appear every epoch. Yet how many of them had actually successfully become heavenly Venerates? Ling Han nodded. In this heaven and earth, even if there would be miracles due to the invasion of the foreign realm and rise of new prodigies, this number should only be 1. Throughout history, there has never been a previous case of 2 heavenly Venerates emerging in a single epoch. In fact, after a heavenly Venerate came to being, the next heavenly Venerate would only emerge after at least 10 epochs. Then, after leaping out of this heaven and earth, perhaps Luan Xing and Hu Niu may also be able to become heavenly Venerates, Ling Han murmured to himself. Otherwise, even if they cultivated both dividing 9 souls and 11 mystery realms, it would still be useless. Perhaps the cultivation surroundings of the foreign realm were more exceptional, and did not have such harsh demands that one had to be fully equipped with the 5th severance, dividing 9 souls, and 11 mystery realms to be able to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. This is a dangerous thought, Small Tower said solemnly. Though the Tower of 3 Realms is a heavenly venerable tier treasure that has surpassed regulations, it was still forged in this heaven and earth, and only would it be effective in this heaven and earth. In the simplest example, your present 10,000x acceleration effects would not be effective in the foreign realm. Very simple. A different heaven and earth meant different regulations. For the sake of strength, I have to make an attempt. Ling Han's stand was very firm. Though the heaven and earth had broken their own rules, and allowed the Dragon's Gate mountain to descend ahead of time, the existence of heavenly venerable tier was unrecognized by the heaven and earth. If there was a gap, it should be impossible to advance into this cultivation level. Alright, let's just set this aside first. At present, the priority is to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. Ling Han went out, and made some inquiries to find out which mystery realm would allow him to use the regulations of time to construct the mystery realms of the Immortal Palace tier. However, progress was extraordinarily rough. If he wanted to construct the mystery realm with regulations of fire, he could go to the Burning Mountain, Demonic Flames Valley, and the like. If he wanted to break through with regulations of lightning, he could go to the Divine Lightning Lake, Mad Cloud Swamp, and so on. But the regulations of time were the strongest regulations in the world, and could be invincible before Celestial King tier. It was not a problem of having few of this kind of mystery realm, but rather they did not exist at all. How stupid! Since I said that the mystery realm should be formed through the regulations of time, I naturally know this place, and you actually do not ask me. How dumb! Small Tower suddenly spoke up after Ling Han's multiple failed inquiries. Ling Han couldn't help but curse and exclaimed, "Would you have died if you had spoken earlier? Furthermore, since you said I should break through with the regulations of time, why did you not tell me the location at the same time? What would be about that then, right?" Small Tower countered very shamelessly. "Alright. I won't drop myself to your level. Now tell me, where is that mystery realm?" Ling Han asked. "Under normal circumstances, you would never be able to find it for your whole life," Small Tower said. "Time is the most mysterious regulation, and the heaven and earth would not permit anyone to touch it. Only celestial medicines can draw on this regulations, and be ingested by humans for comprehension. Then how can I enter into abnormal circumstances?" Ling Han asked smilingly. "You would need to concoct an alchemical pill that allows your soul to transmigrate through time, and only then would you be able to enter into that mystery realm," Small Tower replied. Ling Han was curious, and asked, "It would be my spirit entering, but I am supposed to form my mystery realm inside my body. Would that be of any use?" "Of course," Small Tower scoffed, appearing disdainful. "What you need is only the regulations, and regulations are formless. What does it have to do with your physical body?" "There was such a way too." "Then what is the alchemical pill?" Ling Han asked. "You are not qualified to concoct it yet, because that needs an 8th refinement," Small Tower replied. 8th refinement. 9th refinement was the limit of spirit refinement, and only a 5-star Grandmaster could achieve that, and this alchemical pill actually needed 8th refinement to be effective. The requirements could be considered extraordinarily high. I am presently at 7th refinement and 8th refinement. How long would that take? Ling Han couldn't be sure either. Grandmaster Zi Cheng could also be considered an extraordinary prodigy of alchemy, but even over tens of billions of years, he still had not attained 8th refinement. Then, I will try to achieve 8th refinement first. Ling Han entered into the Black Tower, and began burying himself in alchemy. In any case, there was a channel of business for all the alchemical pills he produced, so he could get new medicinal ingredients for another round of concoction, forming a positive cycle. It could not be denied that Lu Jun, having been accepted as a disciple in the Saintly Origin Academy, was indeed quite strong in alchemy. At least, in the concoction of 3-star alchemical pills, his success rate was as high as 50%, and that was with the basis of 4th refinement, which was extremely shocking. However, because of this, he had received a lot of criticism from Ling Han. "Too stupid. Only a 50% success rate. You wasteful idiot." Ling Han couldn't help but kick him a few times again. "Look here, the water and moon pill is concocted like this." Lu Jun was naturally defiant. He was indeed no match for Ling Han in battle, but in terms of alchemy, Ling Han was far from being a match for him, either. And he actually said that his 50% success rate was too low. Fuck, if even that was considered wasteful, what wouldn't be considered wasteful? 50% success rate, added with 4th refinement, what did that signify? With the money for one portion of ingredients, he could earn 30 times the profit. But as he saw how Ling Han proficiently started the fire and opened the cauldron, Lu Jun was immediately stunned. This bringer of calamity was actually an alchemist as well? Fuck. The more he watched, the more shocked he was. That was because Ling Han was actually really concocting the water and moon pill. This was a 3-star alchemical pill. These movements. Too proficient, too amazing. Even he could not help but want to imitate his movements. Time passed unknowingly, and Ling Han smacked the cauldron. The pill had actually been completed. Only then did realization dawn on Lu Jun. As it turned out, he had been staring at Ling Han concocting an alchemical pill, and as long as 3 months had passed without his awareness. Just how focused had he been that he would overlook such a long time having passed? Perfection level. He also forgot whether he would be hit by Ling Han again. He ran over to check on the alchemical pill that had been concocted, and was stunned yet again, looking at Ling Han with a practically reverent gaze. You are too fuck awesome, aren't you? Ling Han gave him another kick. Don't be a hindrance here. He then began spirit refinement. 1st refinement, 2nd refinement, 3rd refinement, 7th refinement. Lu Jun's eyes were wide and bulging. This scene was really too full of impact. 7th refinement. He actually could achieve 7th refinement. When he knew Ling Han was a 3-star alchemist, he was already numb with shock, but Ling Han could actually achieve 7th refinement. What did that mean? He was a 4-star grandmaster. Brother. Chapter 22:16. 1,000-Year Dream Pill. Lu Jun almost fell to his knees. Even if Ling Han was a prodigy 10,000 times more freakish than Ji Wuming, Lu Jun would only shrug and say how awesome, and that was it. Yet now he wanted to worship Ling Han, and revere him as a god. Too strong. There was actually such an alchemy prodigy that overwhelmed him not just by a large amount, but was even completely qualified to become his master. He was an alchemy prodigy, and thus only even stronger alchemy prodigies could make him submit. Han, young Master Han, he looked up at Ling Han. His eyes filled with admiration. What young master? Go and concoct more alchemical pills. If you still can't raise your success rate to 60% after I break through to 8th refinement, I'll beat you up. Ling Han glared at him. I'll definitely try my best, Lu Jun declared, clapping his chest, the respect in his eyes even more intense. 8th refinement. He was only at 4th refinement, and Ling Han was already beginning to break through to 8th refinement. A step further from 8th refinement would mean that Ling Han would advance to become a 5-star alchemist. Even in the Western Celestial Realm, there were not many 5-star alchemists. He was suddenly very motivated, and even had the idea of wanting to follow Ling Han's lead. This kind of prodigy saw really too rare. If he could follow him, not only would it be an honor, he would also gain innumerable benefits. Ling Han did not take it to heart. He also walked to the sidelines, and began his own pill concoction. Spirit refinement was unrelated to the grade of alchemical pill, so Ling Han chose a 1-star alchemical pill, and then proceeded to execute spirit refinement. It could be predicted that 8th refinement would result in failure after failure after failure. There would definitely be an innumerable amount of alchemical pills that would go to waste. Thus, wouldn't using higher-grade alchemical pills for spirit refinement be a great waste? Ling Han worked hard inside the Black Tower, and occasionally would come out as well, handling the alchemical pills that Lu Jun had concocted over to the Empress and the others so that they could take them to the pharmacy for sale in exchange for some monetary wealth. This was actually not enough for his extravagance, because his rate of spirit refinement was really too fast. Even if only 1-star alchemical pills were wasted, it couldn't hold up with his kind of speed. It could be imagined just how difficult it was to achieve 8th refinement, or even become a 5-star alchemist, when even a 4-star grandmaster, a 7th refinement elite like himself would cause so much expenditure. Sometimes, it was not natural talent that was inadequate, but rather being embarrassingly short of money, and even great celestial king tier forces could not put up with such waste. Thankfully, Ling Han had robbed Lu Jun of all his wealth previously, and added with his own considerable savings, it just barely managed to support his extravagance. If he really didn't have money, he would also concoct some 4-star alchemical pills to relieve some of the pressure. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed in the outside world. Lu Jun had already advanced successfully into 5th refinement with Ling Han's guidance, and had also successfully become a 4-star grandmaster himself. In terms of time in the Black Tower, 1 million years had already passed, long exceeding the slavery period that Lu Jun had signed in his contract, but now that this guy had tasted the fruits of success, he made absolutely no mention of leaving, and merely concocted alchemical pills in silence. He could tell now. Ling Han had absolutely no thought of keeping his secrets to himself. As long as he seriously concocted alchemical pills, the former would give him some guidance. Sight was not that Ling Han treasured his talent, but rather treasured profit, and wanted to earn more. Lu Jun did not have the slightest disagreement about this. He too wanted to help Ling Han earn more, because this meant that his strength in alchemy would continue to improve. And after this 1 million years, Ling Han had finally touched the threshold of 8th refinement. How difficult! 1 million years have already passed, and I have just barely touched the threshold. Ling Han was very rueful. If these words were heard by Grandmaster Zicheng, he would definitely slap Ling Han's face. It should be known how many years Grandmaster Zicheng had been living for, and how long he had stagnated on the level of 7th refinement. Just how many millions and millions of years was that? It was more than hundreds of millions of years, yet still there was no sign of breakthrough at all. You just spent 1 million years, and you were complaining. Furthermore, this was time inside the Black Tower. In the outside world, only 10 years had passed. 10 years. I have the confidence I will be able to succeed within 10 times. Ling Han's eyes shone brightly, filled with confidence. He continued to concoct alchemical pills once, twice, thrice. And by the 7th time, the alchemical pill in his hand did not explode, but instead the 8-fold golden veined pattern appeared. 8th refinement. Success. Ling Han faltered at first, and then burst out laughing. 1 million years, just how long a period of time was that? He did not stop, but rather continued into spirit refinement, consolidating his strength. At the beginning, his success rate was naturally low, less than 10%, but it was soon raised to 20%, 30%, 50%, 70%, 90%. Yet still he could not attain 100% success rate, as if there was a mysterious power influencing his success rate in the heaven and earth, forbidding him from being so heaven-defying. Even the moon has its phases, and some things in the world cannot be perfect. Is that the logic? Ling Han mumbled to himself. 90% was quite sufficient. Small tower, the pill formula of that alchemical pill? Ling Han asked. Thankfully, Small Tower knew this pill recipe. Otherwise, if he had to go to some ancient site and try his luck, Ling Han would definitely go crazy. He began pill concoction. This was a 4-star alchemical pill, and the concoction process was extremely complicated. Even Ling Han was slightly dazed at the beginning, and after failing for at least a dozen times, he finally found some ideas, gained some experience, and then progressed slowly. Another several thousand years passed, and Ling Han had finally successfully concocted the first cauldron of alchemical pills. This is the 1000-year dream pill, and it has never been seen on any alchemy scroll, Ling Han mumbled to himself, while his hand bore a radiant and vibrantly colorful pill that developed into the changes of age. It must reach perfection grade, and added with 8th refinement, to be able to open the corridor of time, send your soul inside the blending point of past, present, and future. That is where the time mystery realm is located, Small Tower said. Ling Han nodded, and continued concocting alchemical pills. Fortunately, not only was he a 4-star grandmaster, he was also the alchemy emperor at that. After succeeding once, he would not fail any further. After every pill completion, the quality of the alchemical pill would be greatly improved. 1000 years had passed, and the 1000-year dream pill he had concocted finally reached perfect grade. He began spirit refinement. That was much easier to do. His success rate of 90% allowed him to concoct 5000-year dream pills after failing once. One was for himself, one for the Empress, one for Huang, one for the Rain Emperor, and the last was for bewitching Maiden Ro. She, too, was about to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. If she could construct 11 mystery realms, Bewitching Maiden Row might not be able to become a monarch tier, but it would definitely shrink down the distance she had separating her from a monarch tier. Coincidentally, the Rain Emperor had also cultivated dividing soul tier to consummate level, and could break through to the Immortal Palace tier. The 5 of them entered into the Black Tower. When breaking through to the Immortal Palace tier, it was naturally the safest to do so in the Black Tower. Otherwise, even if they stayed in their abode, it could still be destroyed. After one such experience, Ling Han naturally did not want to take any more risks. Speaking of Huang, all 5 of them were extremely furious and frustrated. When they broke through to the Immortal Palace tier, they would definitely beat up this bastard. The 5 of them simultaneously took out a 1,000-year dream pill, and then swallowed it. In only a short while, the alchemical pill took effect. This was a 4-star alchemical pill, and had great power. Without the slightest trouble, it swept all 5 of their spirits out of their minds. Then with a tremble, they began to speed up in flight. With a thought from Ling Han, Xiao, the Black Tower opened slightly, and their spirits flew out. In the space inside the Black Tower, there was no way for them to transmigrate through the flow of time. When their spirits appeared, a few mighty figures in the academy immediately exclaimed in surprise. The flow of time had been disturbed. Chapter 22:17. Timestream. Time was the most mysterious power. Time could not be reversed. Even the most powerful person would not dare to trace back time, and attempt to reverse the past, affecting the present, and destabilizing the future. Yet now, the powerful figures discovered that someone had actually entered into the time stream, and was actually going against the flow. They were all stunned, and then extended their divine sense to execute a search in the time stream. So, it is the spirits that have entered into the time stream. The effects of the 1,000-year dream pill. The past cannot be changed, as it would affect the present and the future. However, the 1,000-year dream pill has actually appeared again? This is a forbidden pill recipe. The heavens forbids it from appearing as it would incur jealousy from the heavens. It was lost long ago. The 5 of them. Have they gained the fortune of the heaven and earth? The powerful figures communicated with their divine senses for a while, and then withdrew their gazes. Even if they were all 9th heaven celestial kings, they could not go against the time stream. This was a taboo of heaven and earth, and even they could not accomplish that. Ling Han and his group went against the flow of the time stream. They saw the development of the universe and stars, but not very clearly. Everything flashed by too fast. However, their speed was still increasing, getting faster and faster, such that they couldn't even see any kind of scene, only the time endlessly falling back. When their speed had reached the pinnacle, past, present and future had lost all meaning, and speed itself was also meaningless. Huang, they suddenly shifted from extreme speed to absolute stasis. Everything around them had become grotesque and variegated, filled with bright colors, yet impossible to describe at all. Was this the time mystery realm? As per what Small Tower had said, Ling Han began taking steps and walking. At present, he was only a spirit, and there was no such thing as form. He could manifest into any kind of form or shape he wished, but he had still taken his own form. Not only he, the Empress Bewitching Maiden Row, and the Rain Emperor were all in their own forms, yet they all looked like masses of light, with a kind of vagueness about them. Huang was different. In one instant, she had become a drifting cloud, and in the next she had become a pig, a dog, and then would turn into Ling Han's form. She was having a lot of fun. They opened their mouths to speak, and it was direct communication through divine sense. No matter how far they were from each other, they could communicate their intent to another person instantly. Continue onwards, Ling Han said. They walked, and only after a while, a raging great river appeared ahead of them. The river water was extremely strange. There were actually suns, moons, and stars floating in the water, and change of time was flowing. The time stream. They were all shocked. At first, the time stream was only a kind of analogy, but they did not think that there really was such an existence, now unfolding in front of their eyes. Don't touch it, Ling Han warned. Time cannot be reversed. We are in spirit form and cannot disturb time, but even with the slightest touch, we will be assimilated by time, and will never be able to return to our physical bodies. These words had been spoken by Small Tower very seriously. The Rain Emperor and the others all nodded their heads. Even if Huang was slightly reluctant, she still expressed agreement with a pout. They went upstream of the Timestream. In the river water, they could see events that had happened endless eons ago. However, they could not really decipher most of the events. The scenes were too scattered and fragmented, and there was not much use in doing so, either. What I want to know is how the karmic life Heavenly Venerable died. Additionally, the breakout of the Storm of Darkness 8 epochs ago. The time stream was organized in sequence. The closer they were to the source, the longer ago the events would have happened. The 5 of them traced the ages. Boom, all of a sudden, a wave emerged, surging towards the 5 of them. Step aside. Ling Han quickly moved, grabbing the 3 women simultaneously, and then rapidly retreated. The Rain Emperor's reaction speed was not slow at all, and he practically moved at the same time that Ling Han did. If you are even touched by the water of the time stream, an instant would be eternity. You would be lost in eternal time. This was the most mysterious and noblest power of the heaven and earth. Time could be traced back, but definitely could not be touched, as it would affect the present and change the future. 1 epoch. 2 epochs. 3 epochs. It was unknown how long they had walked for. In this passage of time, time itself was meaningless. There was no past or future here, only present. No matter where Ling Han and his group walked to, that would be the present. 8 epochs ago. They had finally walked to a crucial point, but they immediately looked disappointed. This stretch of the time stream was actually completely blurred, like water that had been disturbed. Why can't it be seen? Huang asked curiously. Could it be that this period of history is too important, so the heaven and earth do not permit watching? Ling Han guessed. As it implicated a heavenly venerate, it was naturally very important. Let's go. Perhaps we can see more clues ahead. They continued onwards, walking on the banks of the time stream. In the time stream, they saw a great many powerful figures that would shake the world in the future, one, like the 9 Lights Ancient Buddha and the Imperial Void Celestial King, which helped Ling Han to finally gain a further understanding of these mighty figures. Thus, they traced back endlessly like this, but there would be occasional lapses in time, burying some major events deeply. 10 epochs, 50 epochs, 100 epochs. The celestial realm was chillingly old. They had walked past 100 epochs, and still they had not reached the end. The time stream was still flowing vigorously. However, there were lapses of time everywhere, hiding who knew how many truths. 140 epochs. They had finally arrived at the end of the time stream. A grassy plain appeared ahead of them. There were blades of grass growing, but upon closer look, the grass would be wilting soon. Some grass seeds had fallen, and very soon new grass would be sprouting and growing, the cycle repeating itself. At first, Ling Han was unconcerned, but he was then stunned. The green grass was actually all celestial medicines. Just how long could celestial medicines be alive? If it was a celestial king-tier great herb, even it living a whole epoch would not be anything strange. But in this place, as far as the eye could see, these celestial medicines had only lived a mere several breaths from birth to wilting. Just what kind of frightening flow of time was this? If we enter, would we also instantly age? The Empress could tell this, her heart wary. No. Ling Han shook his head. We have ingested the 1,000-year dream pill, and while the medicinal effects are active, there is no way anything will happen to us. They advanced, passing the time stream, and entering that grassy plain. As expected, they were protected by a mysterious power, and were not corroded by the power of time. The grassy plain was astonishingly huge. They walked, and quietly kept account of the time. Perhaps over 100 years had passed, but the grassy plain was still that same grassy plain. Turning their heads, they could see that the edge of the grassy plain was actually right behind them. In other words, they had walked for over 100 years, but in truth, they hadn't progressed the slightest bit forwards. In this place, time was a mess, coexisting with chaos and order. Huang! A terrifying power surged out, and a strong chill rose up in Ling Han and his group at the same time. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Even their souls were instantly frozen. In the skies, an eye appeared. The bizarre thing was that this was just a slitted eye, with the white of the eye golden, while the pupil was silver. Indescribable seals flickered, as if it was interpreting the secrets of time. This slitted eye swept a look over Ling Han and his group. Huang, a divine sword fell out of the eye, blooming into countless cold blades that struck out at Ling Han and his group. Even a ninth heaven celestial king could not attack in the time stream. This would reverse the past and present, and change the future. Only a heavenly Venerate would not be affected by the regulations, and could do as they liked. Hiss, this was actually a move from a heavenly Venerate. Chapter 22:18. Intervention of a heavenly Venerate. Heavens, it was a heavenly Venerate that was moving. To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han and his group were only mere dividing soul tiers, even if they were ninth heaven celestial kings, what could they do? Would they be able to block this blow? What could they do? Just wait for death. In this plane, time was incredibly strange. It could be astonishingly rapid, but it could also be overwhelmingly slow, and even a heavenly Venerate would be affected. When this divine sword struck out, it looked to be shockingly fast, yet still streaked a boundless distance in the skies, and it had still not fallen. In this process, the seals on the divine sword were also dimming, as if it had experienced an endless period of time, and was about to be destroyed by age. Instantly, understanding dawned on Ling Han. This heavenly Venerate was not of the same time period as them. Originally, there was absolutely no way that they would have encountered each other, but who asked them to have entered into the time mystery realm, and this was what led to their encounter. Before the divine sword struck its target, it would disappear on its own because it could not overcome the power of time. However, Ling Han and his group were all astounded. Having delivered an attack that could mess up time for so long before finally disappearing, just what kind of great power was this? Heavenly Venerable Tier had transcended regulations, and it was indeed no joke. If it were not for the fact that the heavenly Venerate could not surpass heaven and earth, the might of this strike would have been even stronger, being capable of ignoring time, and ultimately killing them. Yet why had this heavenly Venerate made a move on them without any notice? In the skies, that soul eye narrowed slightly, a bloody scar appearing in the silvery white of the eye, yet it was silvery blood that dripped out. Even if a heavenly Venerate could move, being contrary to time, he ultimately would have to suffer a penalty from the heaven and earth. There were some rules that even a heavenly Venerate could not exceed, or he would still have to suffer a lashback. However, heavenly Venerable Tier was too strong, so even the heaven and earth could not do anything to them. Otherwise, if it had been another person, even if it was a ninth heaven celestial king, they would probably have been completely eradicated. I have seen your vague figures downstream of the time stream, and I cannot allow you to live. This slit eye sent out a blurry message. It was really too far off, so the sound was vague and unclear. It should be that this heavenly Venerate just happened to enter into the time stream at some point in history, and caught sight of Ling Han and his group passing by. Then, he used a great mystical power, saw some aspects of their future, and thought that it was possible that they would affect himself in the future. Thus, even if it meant moving contrary to time, using the past to kill the present, and even if he would suffer a backlash from heaven and earth, he still did it. Ling Han laughed loudly. This meant that there was definitely one among them that had become a heavenly Venerate, and only would this incite wariness from a heavenly Venerate. Otherwise, even if they had all become ninth heaven celestial kings, so what? They wouldn't even be worth a mention. However, this heavenly Venerate was really petty. Could it be that he could not allow others to be his equal? Moreover, since this heavenly Venerate had discovered the threat their group posed in history, why had he not moved in the present flow of time? Could it be that he had long since died? Impossible. If he had already died, then he would not have considered their group a threat. Could it be that this heavenly Venerable Tier had moved despite the order of time, and had thus suffered a lashback from the heaven and earth? Then, after leaving, he would no longer keep this memory? Otherwise it could not be explained. So what if time separates us? So what if I will have to endure the backlash of karma? If I want to kill someone, even the heavens cannot stop me. The slit eye sent out his divine sense. Boom, he exploded with an even more powerful aura, as if the heaven and earth itself would have to prostrate in front of him. Huang, the slit eye sent out a paw this time. It was black as ink, and pressed down on Ling Han and his group. This paw was entwined with boundless seals, and as it struck out, even this mystery realm that did not exist in the heaven and earth would tremble on the verge of collapse. Compared to the previous divine sword, The might of this attack had soared 100 times over. Boom, the black paw struck over, its speed extraordinarily fast. Even boundless time could not stop its might. Ling Han and his group wanted to flee, but no matter how fast their feet ran, their figures were completely motionless. In this heaven and earth, the flow of time was incredibly bizarre. Could it be that they would be dying here? Ling Han's heart was icy cold. To say nothing of the fact that they were only in spirit form now, even if they had physical bodies and could hide inside the Black Tower, so what? When a heavenly Venerate moved, even the Tower of Three Realms could only flee. If it dared to stand off against the heavenly Venerate, it would definitely be destroyed. But was there really no solution? Right at this moment, a dim light streaked out, striking that paw, and forcibly sending it into retreat. Who had moved now that had actually blocked the strike of a heavenly Venerate? The slit eye blinked slightly, and looked behind Ling Han and his group. Looking downstream of the Timestream, that dim light had come from downstream. So it is you. The slitted eye released a cold laugh. I have seen you in the Timestream, and after boundless years, you are no longer in existence. Ling Han and his group were all numb from hearing this. To be able to move in spite of time, that would have to be a heavenly Venerate, but would a heavenly Venerate die? Ling Han suddenly understood which heavenly Venerate would move at this moment, and would also have disappeared in history. The karmic life heavenly venerable. The master he had never met. The five of them all looked downstream of the Timestream, and saw a figure was striding over, feet stepping on the river waters. A black tower floated above his head, and there would be occasional streaks of golden light surging out, exuding an aura that would suppress the heavens and shake the ages. It was the Tower of Three Realms. Ling Han naturally recognized it, and was completely sure that this was the karmic life heavenly venerable. The karmic life heavenly venerable had entered here from a different shard of time, and discovered Ling Han. He had also discovered that he was his future disciple, and had thus moved resolutely when he had encountered danger. As it turned out, this little guy is your disciple from a different era. The slit eye looked into the distance of the Timestream, and showed an expression of dawning realization. I really cannot afford to underestimate your line. To think that two heavenly Venerates would actually emerge. However, the future is not unchangeable. As long as I kill him here, then even the future would also be rewritten. Just try. The karmic life heavenly venerable had already walked to the source of the Timestream, and stood ahead of Ling Han. His tall, broad figure stood in front of Ling Han and his group, protecting them completely. He looked at the skies proudly. Zhou heavenly venerate, do you dare battle me? See if I won't kill you, and turn you into history. How domineering, being so confident even faced with a heavenly Venerate. Ling Han stuck out his head slightly, surveying the comic life heavenly venerable. He was an extremely handsome man, broad and tall in figure. He had thick black hair, each strand seemingly carved from beautiful jade, exuding a gentle luster. His face was also seemingly carved from jade, with clear-cut features and a smooth, bright complexion. The most astonishing was naturally his aura of dominating the whole world, recognizing no one else but himself. The slitted eye stared at the comic life heavenly venerable for a while, and then involuntarily smirked coldly. You are already a dead man, so what need do I have to risk severe injury just to battle you? Moreover, if it actually stirs up time, who knows how it may change history, and it is possible that you may be granted a sliver of hope of survival. Hee, do you think I would be so stupid? Cowardly rat. Karmic life heavenly venerable merely mocked coldly. The slitted eye involuntarily widened slightly, and said, however, you are right. I am determined to kill these juniors. Their future is filled with fog, and even I cannot distinguish it clearly. Without eradicating them, I would not be able to rest easy. He had no interest in battling the karmic life heavenly venerable, yet wanted to kill Ling Han and his group. Was it difficult? Not at all. If a heavenly venerate wanted to kill someone, then even another heavenly venerate would find it very difficult to protect them. Chapter 22:19. Important Decision. The karmic life heavenly venerable laughed loudly. Zhou, just how many epochs has it been since you became a heavenly venerate? And you are actually afraid of a few juniors? Humph, so what? The slit eye scoffed. As long as they can possibly pose a threat to me, I will erase all of them. Too bad that memories would also be erased after leaving here. Otherwise, you could not possibly have become a heavenly Venerate, either. Hearing this, realization dawned on Ling Han and his group. As it turned out, this Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate was even attempting to kill the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable in the Timestream. But at the time, he had not succeeded, and once he left his place, all the relevant memories would disappear. Even a Heavenly Venerate would not be exempted. Otherwise, even if the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable had heaven-defying good luck, he could not have possibly avoided being hunted down by a Heavenly Venerate in real time. Only after returning to this place would the memories that had disappeared recover, and Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate would recall that he had previously attempted to erase the younger Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable from history, changing his destiny. But the stronger a mighty figure was, the harder it was to change because there were too many implications. With this kind of power of heaven and earth and lashback from karma, even a Heavenly Venerate would find it very difficult to succeed. For example, Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate now wanted to kill Ling Han and his group, yet it just so happened that the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable came out to rescue them. This was a kind of power from karma. There is no absolutely determined future, so even if I wish to go against the will of heaven, what of it? The slit eye trembled, and actually walked out of the distance, becoming a giant that was millions and millions of meters tall. He donned bright yellow robes, wearing a black imperial crown. There was only a single slit eye on his forehead, exuding divine light, as if it could see through the past and future. He was standing right there, yet seemed like he did not exist at all, which was extremely mysterious. With me here, you cannot kill anyone, Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable declared proudly, and then shouted at Ling Han and his group, hurry up with your real business here. Though Ling Han and his group very much wanted to watch the great battle of Heavenly Venerates, they also knew the danger of that. Only a shock wave from a single attack of a Heavenly Venerable tier would be able to kill them 10,000 times over. If they insisted on watching the battle, it would be equivalent to committing suicide. I'll send you off. The Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable moved, and a great power surged out. Instantly, the 5 of them were thrown out. They could see grass flying beneath their feet, and traveled a boundless distance in an instant. Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate moved, wanting to stop Ling Han and his group. He had absolutely no intentions to exchange blows with the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable. The latter had already died in history, yet he himself had lived till the present and future. If he battled with the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable, it was possible that he would be severely injured or even die. What was the point then? The Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable laughed, and with a wave of his hands, Ling Han and his group sped up further. Then, he turned his head, and faced Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate directly. Going against the era, it is destined that you cannot possibly succeed, he said. Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate smirked coldly. In front of me, there is nothing impossible. Even if there is great karma from the heaven and earth, so what? I have already surpassed regulations, and even the heaven and earth can do nothing against me. He moved aggressively, wanting to blast the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable aside so he could hunt down Ling Han and his group. The Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable also had no intention of battling him to the death. Though he had seen how he would be dying in the future, he presently had endless attachments that he could not let go of, so how could he possibly risk dying to battle the Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate to the death? For those that had reached heights that they had, who was not the most outstanding prodigy of an era, so who would be weaker than the other? Since it was a matter of the future, it should be left to be resolved in the future. The goal of the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable was very simple, and that was to save the lives of Ling Han and his group. The 2 great Heavenly Venerates battled fiercely. Even the slightest movement would produce an incredibly mighty power, easily capable of killing a 9th Heaven Celestial King. Thankfully, Ling Han and his group had already been sent far away enough by the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable. Otherwise, even if they were in a place with such chaotic time like this, the attack of a Heavenly Venerate would still be able to penetrate time, and land a lethal blow on them. When the Heavenly Venerate power on them was fully expended, they stopped automatically. They saw that they had crossed over the grassy plain, and multiple crystalline pillars lay ahead of them. These pillars reflected their figures, yet their reflections moved differently. Some were going around in circles, some were seated in cultivation, and some were scratching their heads madly. Is this an illusion? Bewitching Maiden Ro asked. Ling Han thought, and then shook his head. Since this is the time mystery realm, time itself is chaotic here. Perhaps what we see is a certain fragment of the future. Both the Empress and the Rain Emperor nodded. It should be this place. Ling Han surveyed the surroundings. According to what Small Tower had said, this was the end of the time mystery realm, and plucking the power of time here would grant a chance of building a mystery realm of the human body and advancing into the Immortal Palace tier. The 5 of them each found a position, and then sat down cross-legged, beginning to break through to Immortal Palace tier. This was similar to a scene that had appeared in the Crystal Pillars. Clearly, this place had already recorded a fragment of their future. The mystical power of time was indeed extraordinary. Ling Han's heart soared, making contact with the mystical power of time around him. There was the past, present, and future. Time had taken the form of shards, which was incredibly amazing. After so many years of settling, Ling Han had long since been equipped with the qualifications to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. Thus, when the mystical power of time came, strong enlightenment immediately rose up in his heart. Correspondingly, some mysterious change had also taken place in his body inside the Black Tower. It was exuding a brilliant light, dazzling and eye-catching. Ling Han hesitated slightly about which of the 5 organs he should cultivate. Heart first, then. He soon came to a decision. The heart was the leader of all 6 organs. When the heart was clear, so was the spirit. However, before breaking through to the Immortal Palace tier, there was one more thing he had to do. And that was to take all the divided souls back into his body for ordinary dividing soul tiers. That was 4 souls returning to 1, but for Ling Han, it was 9 divided souls combined into 1. Sensing that they were about to be fused again, the 9 divided souls all expressed defiance. They were not Ling Han's souls, but rather the 9 source powers of heaven and earth. Previously, they had existed in the form of a divided soul, which was equivalent to them having been granted an independent life. And now that Ling Han was about to take them back into his body, it would be equivalent to erasing their independence. They were naturally dissatisfied with this. However, they were a part of Ling Han that had been split off, and Ling Han was their master. There was no way that they could resist. Ling Han paused slightly. Then, gritting his teeth, he decided not to fuse the 9 source powers of heaven and earth. He already had the imprint of the source powers of heaven and earth in his body. Thus, even if he released the 9 source powers, it would not affect his future comprehension. However, his strength would definitely be greatly affected. For example, he definitely would no longer be able to use Great Clash of source powers. But once Ling Han's decision was made, he did not hesitate any further. He had always believed firmly in his own strength. No matter how strong external factors were, there would ultimately be a limit, while his own strength was what truly had no limits. The 9 source powers had already given him extremely great help, so granting them freedom would also be showing them respect and gratitude. That was the case. Ling Han's body in the Black Tower trembled, and the 9 divided souls all fell out of his body. He did not want any external objects, and wanted to advance into Immortal Palace tier with the purest self, breaking through to become the strongest. The 9 divided souls all expressed gratitude towards him. Throughout the ages, who could be so domineering and confident in themselves? Ling Han extracted the mystical power of time, and began to temper his heart so he could construct the first mystery realm of his body. Chapter 22-20. Finally becoming Immortal Palace tier. Ling Han's spirit channeled, and a power was mysteriously manipulating it. The origin power in his body surged, and the regulations of time turned into flames that were tempering his heart. Though the source power of time had left his body, it had still left behind its own brand, which exuded a weak mystical power, and cooperating with the regulations of time that he touched, they were tempering his heart together. Ling Han's soul was playing the role of a bridge. On one side it was the time mystery realm, and on the other it was his physical body. In this mystery realm, time was meaningless. An instant could mean eternity, but eternity could also be an instant. In Ling Han's body, his heart was being refined by the regulations of time, progressing towards becoming a mystery realm. This would become a space of its own that could contain both items and people. It could also store up power, nourish precious tools, and when it had reached the pinnacle, it would develop into a world of its own. Ling Han suddenly had an enlightenment. It was no wonder that there were so many mystery realms in this world. Perhaps a considerable number of them were not naturally formed, but rather formed by Immortal Palace tier elites. His first mystery realm was taking form, and his small realm was also increasing frighteningly. It was unknown how long had passed, and the first mystery realm, the heart, was finally formed fully. Boom! Ling Han's body trembled violently, and a majestic power was surging, about to gush out. Xiao! His spirit suddenly moved, and was madly retreating the way it had come from. The effects of the 1,000-year dream pill had ended. Ling Han released a moan, and suddenly snapped his eyes open. He felt like he was drenched in sweat, his whole person almost about to collapse. Having his soul being forcibly plucked from his physical body was not something to play around with. Whoa! The Rain Emperor and the others also awoke at the same time. They were all holding their heads, appearing to be in incredible discomfort. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and he couldn't help but shake his head, looking disappointed. Not one of the Rain Emperor and the others had actually broken through to the Immortal Palace tier. True, this was not something that could be accomplished in one go. Ling Han, you've broken through? Huang exclaimed with great delight. She could see the terrifying wave of power from Ling Han's body. It had far surpassed the level of the dividing soul tier. Ling Han nodded and replied, yes, I have. Haha, it is still fourth brother that is the most outstanding. The Rain Emperor nodded, not withholding his praise for Ling Han. The 5 of them had started together, yet only one of them had broken through. Wasn't the problem clear here? The Empress, Huang, and bewitching Maiden Ro did not feel the slightest envy. As they saw it, they wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to immediately become a heavenly Venerate. What did we experience inside? The bewitching Maiden Ro suddenly asked, a questioning expression on her face. Ling Han and the others were the same as well. Vaguely, they could feel that they seemed to have experienced some major event inside the time mystery realm, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not recall it now. It seemed like there was some kind of mysterious power that had forcibly erased their memories. Just what in the world happened? They scrambled their brains, but their gains were limited. They vaguely remembered that they seemed to have been advancing along a mighty river. That was the flow of time, showing the past, present, and future. But now that they thought about it, they could not recall the slightest detail. Then, it was a plain where time was chaotic, followed by a valley, where there were multiple crystals of time that developed into past and future. There should be something else in this, but they could not recall it no matter what. Forget it. Let's not consider this problem now. Ling Han stopped confusing himself with thoughts about this matter. I will go to endure the heavenly tribulation first, and then I will concoct the 1,000-year dream pill again. He exited the Black Tower, and dark stormy clouds instantly assailed him. Lightning flashed within, astonishingly terrifying. In a few steps, Ling Han had already left the Saintly Origin Academy, and arrived in an uninhabited desolate forest, greeting the heavenly tribulation. With a tremor of his figure, 9 figures instantly stumbled out of his body. I have already severed my connections with you. From now onwards, you are all independent entities, Ling Han said. These 9 figures were the manifestations of the 9 source powers of heaven and earth. Greetings, Master. All 9 of them bowed down at the same time. Ling Han leaped up. As he greeted the oncoming heavenly tribulation, he asked, why do you address me as Master? You have a generous heart. You obviously could have enslaved us, yet did not do so. We are grateful for this. Secondly, you have lofty ambitions, and have astonishing good fortune. We will also be willing to follow by your side, and seek better future prospects for ourselves, the 9 of them said. At first, source powers of heaven and earth would only have weak intelligence, and only through changes over time would they be able to develop a perfect intelligence. However, after they had fused with Ling Han, they would also be affected by Ling Han, allowing the awakening of their intelligence to speed up countless times over. And now, they truly possessed actual intelligence, no different from any other person. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then said, all right. The invasion from the foreign realm is close at hand. I need enough strong people to assist me so that we can join forces to stand against the invasion of the foreign realm. You are all manifested from the source powers of heaven and earth. Once your intelligence has been awakened, your rate of cultivation will be incredibly shocking. Yes, Master. The 9 of them answered in unison again. Ling Han was practically dealing with the heavenly tribulation absent-mindedly. His battle prowess had long since reached the pinnacle of the 4th secret. Even if the heavenly tribulation he was presently enduring had also surpassed the height of 1st secret, it was only about the level of 2nd secret, at most. How could it threaten him? Thus, as he carelessly parried the heavenly tribulation, he conversed with the 9 of them. Do you have names? If he called them something like 9 heavens flame, that wasn't the name of a person at all. Not yet. Please grant us names, master, the 9 of them said. Ling Han nodded, and then said, 9 heavens flame, you will be called Ling Hua. Xianyin sourcewater, you will be called Ling Xueqi. Fiery flame lightning strike wood, your name is Ling Mu. He absolutely did not have the slightest bit of creativity in naming, yet the 9 of them were completely unconcerned. Elites had never announced how strong they were through their names, but rather through genuine strength. The lowest accomplishment of source powers of heaven and earth was the celestial king tier, and all of them had awakened intelligence. That was even more incredible. To say nothing of 9th heaven celestial king tier, at least 8th heaven celestial king tier would not be too difficult. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dispersed. Ling Han's figure descended and said, "Come, let's return." He was filled with irritation and anger. Now that he had advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, the first thing he was going to do is to seek Huang out for a fight. The 10 people returned to the academy. Ling Hua and the others passed through the gates of the academy as Ling Han's followers. However, after they entered into the academy, they heard that Huang had left 8 years ago. Not just Huang, but even Ji Wuming, Jia Lan, and Shi Chanzi have also left? Ling Han murmured. It seemed like he had missed something these years. Han Lin, come with me. An ascending origin tier elite appeared. He was a teacher of the academy, and beckoned Ling Han over. Ling Han nodded, and walked over. Then he asked, "Dare I ask, my lord, has something happened?" "I am not sure of the details myself. This is a command from Lord Eternity," that ascending origin tier elite answered. Lord Eternity? That would have to be the Eternity Celestial King. Ling Han naturally knew who the Eternity Celestial King was. He couldn't help but feel surprised that he would actually be summoned by a 9th heaven Celestial King. Led by that ascending origin tier, he arrived at a small courtyard. After he pushed the doors open and entered, that ascending origin tier elite closed the doors behind him, and did not come in with him. Come, sit. This small courtyard had not used any secret technique of space. Thus, this really was a small courtyard. There was a man in white robes seated in the courtyard, his back facing Ling Han. He was presently brewing tea, and there were 9 streaks of colored light entwined around him. A 9th heaven celestial king. Chapter 22-21. Front Lines. Ling Han took a few steps forwards, and then bowed to pay his respects, saying, "Greetings, Eternity Celestial King." No need for excessive politeness. The Eternity Celestial King turned around, but all Ling Han could see was an empty void. It was as if this person did not even exist in this plane of existence, which was incredibly bizarre. When the Eternity Celestial King saw this, he merely smiled calmly, and said, "This is only a sliver of thought that I have left in this place. My real self is still at the connecting point of the 2 realms, embroiled in battle with a foreign realm." He paused and then continued, "You do not have to ask too many questions. You merely have to listen to me speak. At present, a situation has arisen in the connecting point of the 2 realms. A neutral zone has actually appeared, and whether it is our celestial realm or the foreign realm, we are unable to draw on the regulations of heaven and earth there. We can only use the power and regulations that are stored up in our bodies in battle. Now, this neutral zone still has restrictions on cultivation level. Only those in ascending origin tier and below may pass through. Those of the Celestial King tier can only stand outside and watch. Some days ago, the foreign realm provoked us, asking for a battle between the younger generation of both sides. Us old folks gave it some thought, and thought that we should also allow the youths of this generation to train themselves, and be aware of how strong and fearful the foreign realm can be. Thus, we agreed. Your ways are quite impressive, and we haven't found you in these few days. Never mind, every person has their own secrets, and I have no intentions of pursuing the matter either. Since you have come out of seclusion, and have also broken through to the Immortal Palace tier at that. Then go there and make your own contributions on behalf of our celestial realm. If Ling Han had not known about the storm of darkness previously, he would definitely have been completely puzzled. Yet now that he was clear about what the Eternity Celestial King was talking about, he also knew that a change had taken place in the war between the two realms. A neutral zone had actually appeared at the connecting point. If this zone widened continuously, and could allow even stronger people to enter, wouldn't the celestial realm be in trouble? Ling Han thus thought, and quickly replied, "This junior is willing to do what I can for the celestial realm." "Alright, go on then." The Eternity Celestial King waved him off. "Your identity letter can open the transfer formation. At present, the only transfer formation is near the connecting point of the two realms. Hee. Looks like you already know about the storm of darkness." "Yes, I do," Ling Han replied, bowing. The Eternity Celestial King nodded, and took a second look at Ling Han. "Brat, you are really quite determined to actually surrender 9 source powers of heaven and earth. If it had been myself of the past, would I have had that kind of courage?" His expression was slightly dazed. Clearly, he could not decide at this moment. It should be known that celestial kings were incredibly resolute, yet now he was actually hesitating, which showed how Ling Han willing to give up the 9 source powers of heaven and earth was such a great decisive feat. Ha ha ha. The Eternity Celestial King suddenly laughed loudly, his eyes shining brightly. "The fact that I would hesitate so long is already clearly telling of the problem. Young man, I am very optimistic about you. Come to the connecting point of the two realms. I want to see you with my own eyes, help you quickly raise your cultivation level, and who knows, you may create the future. Go on." Ling Han bowed respectfully, and then retreated out of the house. He thought for a moment. In any case, the Rain Emperor and the others would be advancing to the Time Mystery Realm in spirit form, so it could be done anywhere. Hence, he did not return, and just brought Ling Hua and the others towards the transference portal. After showing their identity letters, the 11 of them entered into the transfer formation. A mysterious and majestic power surged over them, and they arrived in a new location. This was a desolate plain, and there were corpses everywhere. However, their shapes were strange, and they were burning in flames. Ling Han looked closely. Those were not the regulations of fire, but rather Tao flames. When a person died, their Tao would be extinguished, but there were some beings that were too strong, and even though their spirits had died, their bodies were still present. However, the heaven and earth would not allow beings that were too strong to remain in the world, and would use the Tao flames of heaven and earth to burn the corpses of these elites completely. That was the case now. The heaven and earth was refining the remains of such elites. These are the corpses of elites of the foreign realm. Beside the transfer formation, an elder was seated. His face was completely covered with wrinkles, and was average-looking. He did not show the slightest sign of a powerful aura. Ling Han glanced at him, yet a boundless chill rose up suddenly within him. He felt that this elder could easily turn him into nothing with just a mere thought. "Young man, your destination is the stronghold at the end of the desolate plain," the elder said. "We have built a stronghold at the border of the celestial realm, and laid down a super great formation to resist the invasion of the foreign realm. However, occasionally, some strong beings would still be able to sneak over, and this desolate plain has become a second battlefield." Ling Han could only nod in response. This elder had to be a celestial king, and probably a higher-level celestial king at that. Otherwise, he would not have been qualified to stand guard here. He would have been easily killed. He surveyed the surroundings curiously. This was the second battlefield in the war between the celestial realm and foreign realm, and it was also the last line of defense. If the foreign realm's invasion reached this place, they would be able to penetrate deep, and enter into the vast celestial realm. Clearly, this line of defense was not as firm as a mountain, because the internal area of the celestial realm had already been corroded by the foreign realm by a great portion. This was also understandable as it would be difficult to stay on defense constantly. "Senior, we juniors will take our leave then." Ling Han clasped his hands towards the elder in farewell. Then, he strode forwards, and began the transmigration to the desolate plains. After they stepped into the desolate plains, Ling Han immediately discovered a terrifying aura surging towards them. It turned into ugly evil spirits, wanting to corrode his soul. His spirit did not waver, and he merely strode forwards. Since that elder allowed him to pass, It meant that there was definitely no danger here. As expected, these evil spirits only came towards him, yet could not take a step further. It was as if there was an invisible barrier that was protecting Ling Han. Ling Hua and the others were the same as well. They were all manifested from the source powers of heaven and earth, and had experienced who knew how many changes through the ages, so it was natural that they could not possibly be easily scared. There were corpses scattered all around the desolate plain. Because this was far behind the front lines of the celestial realm, it was natural that the corpses of elites from the celestial realm could not be seen here. They definitely had to have been dealt with properly. The remains here were all from the elites of the foreign realm, and they were basically divided into two categories. One type was human form, yet had the hooves of a bull as their feet, horns growing from their foreheads, and a tail at their bottoms. The other type was the form of insects, with 6 legs, double wings, and there were even inverted spikes on their legs, exuding a cold light. These two forms were both very familiar. Ling Han had previously seen the so-called deity on the island, and their image was a human with horns and a tail. Furthermore, in a mystery realm, he had also seen the severed limb of a heavenly Venerate from the foreign realm, and it was an insect leg that had inverted spikes. He had a guess in mind, and that was that this human form with horns and a tail was the corresponding humans of the foreign realm, while the insect form should be corresponding to wild beasts. They were indeed two completely different worlds. Ling Han mused ruefully as he strode forwards. There was no danger in the desolate plains. Though there were many corpses of elites from the foreign realm, they were being burnt by the Tao flames of heaven and earth, and no longer had their vicious might. They could not possibly pose any further threat to Ling Han and the others. However, it was incredibly hard to walk here, such that even their foreheads had broken out in sweat, and every step further was a challenge. After about 3 months, a majestic great city finally appeared ahead of them. The cities in the celestial realm were all as huge as planets, and this one was one of the most well-known. Its colossal size was indescribable, and it was entirely afloat in the air, with multiple streaks of starlight descending, appearing extremely magnificent. This was the first line of confrontation between the foreign realm and the celestial realm. Chapter 22-22. Treated with disdain. This was no ordinary city, but rather a stronghold. Formation patterns covered the walls of the city, exuding a powerful air of danger that was supreme, as if it was a ninth heaven celestial king. No. It was not like 1, but 10, or even tens of them working together to stand guard here, which was extremely frightening. Ling Han nodded internally. If that wasn't the case, how could they possibly stand guard against the mad barrage of assaults from the foreign realm? This was a stronghold. There were no gates of entry on either side, which Ling Han was slightly stunned by. He had no idea what he should do. Right at this moment, a man strode towards him. He wore only a piece of animal hide on him. His figure broad, wide, and sturdy. There was actually a star on his shoulder. Though it was only the size of a fist, it was emanating a fiercely powerful aura. "Where have you come from?" this man asked. He looked to be in his 30s, and the parts of his body that were not covered by the animal hide were covered with scars. Ling Han was slightly surprised. That was because this man's cultivation level was the Immortal Palace tier, and had even reached the extent of 3rd secret. For Celestials, even if they were missing limbs, their injuries would recover in an instant. How could so many scars be left behind? There was only one reason, and that was the martial intent of the foreign realm was left in these scars, and this affected his recovery. This was a stronghold, standing off against the front lines of the foreign realm. Clearly, the injuries he had were left behind by the cultivators of the foreign realm. Ling Han felt great respect to those in the stronghold. They were fighting bravely at the front lines, but to say nothing of gaining the gratitude of others, there were not many people in the celestial realm that were even aware of their existence. Yet now, this person's attitude displeased Ling Han slightly. This was a kind of interrogating question that carried disdain. Ling Han suppressed his displeasure. On the basis that the other man had bled and fought for the celestial realm, he answered calmly, "Saintly Origin Academy." "Saintly Origin Academy?" The middle-aged man faltered slightly, and then revealed a disdainful expression, saying, "The students of Saintly Origin Academy have arrived 8 years ago. Though there were some that arrived later, it would not have passed the limit of 2 years. He peered at Ling Han, and the disdain at his lips became even more pronounced. You must be a coward. Coming only after dragging it out so long. Hee, you must have some powerful figure backing you up, right? However, forced by the circumstances, you had to come whether you were willing to or otherwise. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This guy really had a good imagination. How did he manage to come with such a deduction? He smiled calmly and said, I have come to report here as commanded by the Eternity Celestial King, so it would be best to let me enter the city first. Humph, how do I know that you aren't a member of the foreign realm here in disguise? This middle-aged man demanded coldly, a cold smirk on his face. Are you purposely causing trouble here? Ling Hu demanded loudly. He was manifested from the source power of flames, so his temper was also extraordinarily explosive. He was the first that lost his patience. The middle-aged man glanced at him and scoffed. Do you think that just any random character would be qualified to enter into the Clear Heaven Pass? Right, in his eyes, Ling Han and his group had all become random characters. He felt that Ling Han and his group had come too late, so they had to be cowards fearing death, so it was natural that he felt a great disdain towards them. When we were bleeding for the celestial realm, what were you people doing? The middle-aged man surveyed Ling Han and his group arrogantly. Your lives were exchanged with the lives of the many generations of our ancestors. And you actually dare act unreasonable with me? And shout at me? Who do you people think you are? By the look of things, it seemed like he wanted nothing more than to spit all over their faces. Finally, Ling Han understood. This guy was actually feeling unbalanced. Judging by his words, he had been in this stronghold since birth, and had never seen the prosperity of the celestial realm. Originally, it was nothing too major. He had grown up in a world of violence and danger, and had long since become accustomed to bloodshed. However, when large masses of students from the Saintly Origin Academy came here, poor kids like them, who had grown up in the stronghold, found out that there was actually a colorful world outside of this place. Some of them would be defiant, and their unbalanced psyche would naturally be expected. Indeed, they could not understand. Why was it that generations of them had to stand guard here in this harsh place, bleed and cry, and might have to make funeral arrangements for their companions every day? With this kind of psychology, when this middle-aged man discovered that Ling Han and the others were cowards, his negative feelings naturally burst out completely. Now that he understood this, Ling Han felt slight pity for this guy, and thus did not get angry. Instead, he pressed a hand on Ling Hu's shoulder, and said, Hee, we also hope to do what we can for the celestial realm. So please make arrangements for our entry into the city. Our? The middle-aged man scoffed. Sorry, the Clear Heaven Pass does not welcome cowards. I know that people like you who have come here merely want to gain some experience and military credit, but you all have come to the wrong place. Ling Han's expression darkened slightly. Don't just throw insults as you please. There was a reason why we have come late, and even celestial kings have not reprimanded us. What right do you have to blabber nonsense like this here? Humph, so you've shown your true colors now? The middle-aged man sneered. Because I hit the nail on the head, you are now shamed into anger. Don't use whatever celestial king to intimidate me. I fight bravely here, and am not even afraid of the people from the foreign realm. How could you possibly scare me? Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This man went down a dead end too easily. After he was sure that they were cowards, he insisted firmly that this was the truth. He shook his head and said, If you continue to blabber nonsense like this, I won't be polite. You actually want to fight me? The middle-aged man sneered. How would delicate flowers that had been cultivated in a greenhouse like you know the cruelties of war? I have been battling the foreign realm every single day, polishing my own battle prowess. Even if our cultivation levels were the same, I would still be able to suppress all of you single-handedly. He smirked coldly. The auras emitting from Ling Han and his group were only at first secret, their cultivation level being far lower and weaker than his. Get out of the Clear Heaven Pass. This is not the place for you to come and act recklessly. He moved aggressively. Boom, multiple veined patterns immediately appeared on his right hand, humming loudly as he grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han was slightly surprised because while this man was clearly not a king tier, the attack he delivered was close to the standards of a king tier. This was very inconceivable. Could it be that the daily contact with death would transform one completely? Ling Hu roared furiously. He hadn't been able to hold himself back in the first place, and had not exploded only because Ling Han was subduing him. Now, seeing the middle-aged man attack, he was naturally the first to rush out and greet the oncoming attack with a punch of his own. Boom! His whole person had turned into flames. The 9 heavens flame was naturally overbearing. Pang! The two of them exchanged a blow, and at the same time, their figures trembled. The shock wave created from the impact point reverberated boundlessly. The middle-aged man's expression inadvertently changed drastically as he asked, "Monarch tier?" The other was a first secret, yet could manage to tie with a third secret like him. If he was not a monarch tier, how could he accomplish this? Yet, the disdain in his expression was even more pronounced. A great monarch tier was actually such a coward. What a humiliation. So what if you are a monarch tier? In this clear heaven pass, even a monarch tier would have to crawl. He moved aggressively, and with a tremor of his hands, multiple veins popped, turning into strong dragons, boosting his battle prowess endlessly. Go down! He sent out his fist in a punch that moved to suppress Ling Hua. Chapter 22-23. Conflict. Ling Hua smiled proudly. He was no ordinary monarch tier, but manifested from the source power of heaven and earth, and possessed a sliver of celestial king tier might. In other words, before the celestial king tier, he would be stronger than a typical monarch tier, and could be considered a top-grade monarch tier. However, compared with freaks like Ling Han and Ji Wuming, he was still slightly inferior. What right did a king tier have to act arrogant in front of him? Even if he was 2 minor levels higher, it would still be useless. He also raised his fists to greet the oncoming attack from the middle-aged man, and what he was using was shockingly the fists of fury. The 9 great source powers of heaven and earth had initially been fused with Ling Han, so they naturally possessed all the celestial techniques that Ling Han had grasped. Of course, now that they had been separated and gained their independence, all the ultimate techniques that Ling Han comprehended and cultivated in the future would have no relation to them any longer. Fists of fury blasted out, their might shaking the heavens. The middle-aged man instantly fell into a disadvantage. In the first place, he was no match for Ling Hua. What more now when the latter had used the fists of fury? Pang! Over a dozen moves later, a punch landed on his left shoulder. He stumbled backwards continuously, and when he turned his head to look, he saw that there was a charred print of a fist left on his shoulder, which was still emanating the aroma of barbecued meat. The middle-aged man was both furious and shocked. Suddenly, he pointed at clear heaven pass in the skies, mumbling something under his breath. Whatever he was muttering could not be discerned at all, right until the end when he shouted loudly. A streak of silvery light shot out of clear heaven pass, and shone on him. Boom! His aura suddenly soared rapidly, as if it had been strengthened several times in an instant. Suppress! He shot out, and battled fiercely with Ling Hua once more. Boom! 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 The power of regulation resonated, forming a brilliant light of Tao that was incredibly intense. What shocked Ling Han and the others was that this guy actually managed to fight Ling Hua to a tie. This powerful stronghold could actually increase the power of cultivators. Ling Han couldn't help but recall the deity that was worshipped by the force of darkness. Wasn't it also a statue, yet could grant a power boost of around 10 times to one's battle prowess? This was extremely amazing. Ling Hua's temper was also ignited with the battle. His body took the form of fiery flames, capable of melting all other regulations. He was a source power of heaven and earth, so it would be strange if his battle prowess was not strong. After the fierce battle continued for about half a day, the middle-aged man's aura suddenly trembled, and became incredibly unstable. Then, it declined rapidly, and his battle prowess also fell drastically as well, as if the power boost granted to him by Clear Heaven Pass had already been exhausted. Ling Hua took the opportunity to attack fiercely. Pang, pang, pang. The middle-aged man was sent back into continuous retreat. Li Hongfei, you drew on the power of Clear Heaven Pass, and actually did not manage to defeat a first secret cultivator? Another man walked out, similarly dressed in animal hide, appearing incredibly gruff and coarse. The middle-aged man from before wiped the trace of blood at the corner of his lips, and his fighting spirit became even more uplifted instead of reducing. He humphed and declared, "Deng Li, don't interfere in my affairs." The man that came later smirked coldly, and retorted, "You can only use the power of Clear Heaven Pass once a month, yet have wasted it here. It is already displeasing to Lord Nye, who has especially commanded that I come to take a look." He paused, and then continued, "Weren't you asked to investigate the identities of these people? Why have you gotten into battle with them?" Li Hongfei humphed and replied, "These people claim that they come from the Saintly Origin Academy." Saintly Origin Academy? Deng Li's eyes swept over Ling Han and the others, and similarly looked disdainful. "Is that the academy that was co-founded by the Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings?" "Humph, they have so many resources at their disposal, but they are all such trash. If these resources had been used on us, we would have been able to advance into the ascending origin tier," Li Hongfei declared, nodding. "Let me ask you, since you are the disciples of Saintly Origin Academy, why have you come so late?" Deng Li shouted this question at Ling Han and his group. Ling Han shook his head and replied, "You two are merely guides. What right do you have to interrogate us? Just answer whatever question you are asked. Spare the nonsense." Deng Li exclaimed impatiently. Just like Li Hongfei, he was filled with envy and disdain towards Ling Han and those who had grown up in a safe, peaceful environment. Ling Han chuckled. "Initially, I have been quite respectful of you guys, but you are so determined to ruin these affections. Now, I can't be bothered to waste words on you. I will give you two options. First, invite us into the city, or second, I will capture both of you, and then you can bring us into the city. Which do you choose?" "Hee, you are trying to overwhelm us with numbers?" Deng Li smirked coldly. "You are truly naive. This is Clear Heaven Pass, and we have multiplied who knows how many generations here, and you are trying to compare with us in numbers?" He took out a bull's horn, but it was entirely golden. Then, he put it to his mouth and spoke a few words into it. In a short while, multiple streaks of light surged beneath the great city, revealing one person after another. There were men and women. Some men were dressed very simply, that was in a piece of animal hide. Some men's attire was no different with the others of the celestial realm embroidered robes, which looked very luxurious. But the women's attire were all completely long skirts and beautifully made up. They had all carefully matched their attire. Deng Li smiled proudly and declared, "In terms of numbers, we have more." As he spoke, these people had already walked to stand next to Deng Li and Li Hongfei. There were a total of 17 of them, and added with Deng Li and Li Hongfei, they totaled 19. Though their manner of dress differed, as they stood there, they were all exuding an aura akin to primitive beasts. This was an aura that could only be formed after experiencing countless battles. It was also through this aura that they could be distinguished as the natives of Clear Heaven Pass. Ling Han stated calmly, "We have come to the Clear Heaven Pass under command of a Clear Heaven Pass, so why must you cause trouble for us? Having beaten up one of us, you say it is us causing the trouble?" A native immediately jumped out. Though he was dressed in embroidered robes, it could not conceal the primitive air he exuded. He appeared incredibly irritable. "We have bled and sacrificed for the celestial realm. We are not here to suffer your insults and humiliation." This accusation was too severe. Ling Han shook his head and retorted, "Just to sentence us with crime, there is no lack of words. Come on then. Since you guys love to fight so much, come, all of you together. I will then beat you into submission." "Impudence!" Li Hongfei and the others cried out in rebuke. Ling Han smiled. "Wasn't it a fight you wanted? Why do you have to be so reserved? No need to waste words on them. We'll capture them and beat them up first. Take them a notch down," Deng Li declared impatiently. "Right, beat them up first, then talk," one woman said aggressively. All 19 of them looked keen and eager. The eyes they directed at Ling Han made it seem like they were fierce wolves that had spotted a rabbit. Ling Han turned to Ling Hua and the others, and said, "The rest of you step down first." "Master!" Ling Hua and the rest exclaimed in defiance. They, too, wanted a battle, but should Ling Han move, they would definitely have no opportunity for a fight. Ling Han chucked. "It's all right. In the future, there will be more than enough battles for you. Now, we don't have the time to waste on a few minor characters." "What did you say?" When Li Hongfei and the others heard Ling Han's words, they all looked furious. He actually dared to call them minor characters. Though they weren't the most outstanding generation of Clear Heaven Pass, all of them had come from great clans, and their status could be considered lofty and noble, And now they were actually looked down on as minor characters, which naturally pissed them off. We'll capture him first. That's right. He seems to be the leader of these cowards. To defeat the enemy, the chief must be captured first, and it would also be more fulfilling to beat up the leader. The 19 of them moved at the same time, wanting to use their united power to capture Ling Han in a single stroke. Chapter 22-24. Gained respect. The 19 of them moved at the same time. Though their cultivation levels varied, the weakest was at second secret, and the majority were at third secrets. With so many of them attacking at the same time, their might was naturally world-shaking. However, Ling Hua and the others merely crossed their arms over their chests, appearing to be completely unconcerned. They had watched Ling Han in battle many times, and suppressing third secret king tiers was naturally child's play for him. Now that Ling Han had further advanced to the first secret, even a fifth secret king tier could just barely match him. However, Li Hongfei and the others were unaware that Ling Han was that strong. When they saw that Ling Han was indeed going to confront elites like them alone, they couldn't help but smirk coldly. He bit off more than he could chew. Boom, multiple giant hands descended, as if multiple stars were falling down, which was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han smiled slightly, and casually swept out his hand. Pang pang pang. He had instantly sent all 19 of them flying backwards, all of them throwing up blood madly. And this was still because he had held back. Otherwise, he would have been able to insta-kill all 19 of them. Li Hongfei and his group all paled in shock. He was only a mere first secret, yet could actually defeat all 19 of them in an instant. What kind of concept was that? Monarch tier. Even a monarch tier could only be invincible against an opponent superior by 2 levels, which was equivalent to a third secret king tier, but there were as many as 10 such elites among them, so no matter what, they shouldn't have been defeated by Ling Han in a single blow. Above monarch tier, Li Hongfei said shakily. Even his body was trembling. Such an existence was called monarch star in the clear heaven pass, placed high above as if they were in the 9th heaven, and other monarch tiers could only look up at them. Monarch star. Deng Li also exclaimed, his expression filled with disbelief. This coward in their eyes was actually a monarch star, a supreme overlord that would definitely become a 9th heaven celestial king in future. They exchanged looks, and then all yielded, falling to one knee. Greetings, my lord. The people of Clear Heaven Pass were all incredibly realistic. Monarch stars would definitely become 9th heaven celestial kings. This was the strongest power of the Clear Heaven Pass, and was also the rock main pillar that stood against the foreign realm, and would be nurtured with great focus. Thus, Deng Li and the others immediately knelt and conceded. Ling Han faltered as well. He had seen many different types of people, but he had not seen many that were like them. He nodded and said, "Rise." Only then did Li Hongfei and the others stand up. One of them said, "Please come into the pass, my lord." They set out together, but did not fly to that stronghold in the skies. Instead, they arrived at the area beneath the stronghold, and Ling Han saw that there were formation patterns carved on the ground. It was clear that they had been there a long time, and some traces were already mottled. They stood on the formation patterns, and after Deng Li used the horn to say a few words, a light surged over, wrapping around them. When the light flashed again, they had already appeared in the great city in the skies. Clear Heaven Pass dominated the path that the foreign realm had to take in their invasion. It was incredibly majestic, and when they appeared inside it, they could immediately feel a militaristic air of bloodshed and an ancient air of age that assaulted their senses. Even a person with the weakest character would be influenced by this atmosphere when they came here, and proceed to show a stronger side of themselves. "Please come with us." Li Hongfei and the others continued to lead the way, bringing Ling Han and his group onwards. In other places of the celestial realm, every city was as huge as a planet. Thus, there were actually mountains and rivers here, which was then followed by scattered towns. But in this place, there were no mountains or bodies of water. It was all structures that were constructed from stones, filled with a primitive urge. Occasionally, they could see the corpses of elites of the foreign realm. They had been suppressed in the formation, and their power was being extracted and supplied for the whole defense system of the great city. They traveled for slightly less than half a day's time before finally arriving in front of a stone military camp. Then, Li Hongfei brought Ling Han and his group in to meet with the person in charge here. That was a man with a single eye. A piece of black cloth covered his left eye, and his black hair hung over his shoulders. His upper body was bared, muscles bulging as if they were built from mountain rock. An ascending origin tier, Ling Han thought. He had cultivated the heaven-deceiving technique, and thus was the most sensitive to auras. However, because the gap in their cultivation levels was too wide, he could not judge the other's exact cultivation level. New disciples from the Saintly Origin Academy, this one-eyed man said. Yes. Ling Han nodded, then turned around, and pointed at Ling Hua and the others. They are my followers. The one-eyed man was slightly surprised because he could sense how strong Ling Hua and the others were. Instead, it was Ling Han that seemed very ordinary. This naturally was because of the heaven-deceiving technique. He was not overly curious though and said, "You have been recruited under my leadership. We are 17th Camp of Unit D, and I am your senior officer. My name is Nye Hashan. Settle down first, and I will slowly assign missions to you." Ling Han nodded and said, "My lord, we will beg our leave first then." They walked out of Nye Hashan's stone house, and Li Hongfei approached them again. "My lord, let me arrange accommodations for you. Tell me about the recent situation," Ling Han asked. Yes. Li Hongfei began to talk about the major events that had happened in these few years. Just as the Eternity Celestial King had said, the foreign realm had issued a written war challenge to the Celestial Realm, wanting to hold matches for the younger generation. However, in these years, it had only been severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier prodigies that were battling, and had not yet been raised to the level of the Immortal Palace tier. Judging by the present situation, the Celestial Realm side was in extremely terrible circumstances. That was because the younger generation of the Celestial Realm had fought a total of 17 battles, yet had lost every single one of them. The prodigies of the Celestial Realm were too strong. From severing mundane tier to dividing 7 souls, there were supreme monarch tiers in each level. Especially in the dividing soul tier, where there was no shortage of dividing 5 souls, dividing 6 souls or even dividing 7 souls elites. Though it was possible that they could never attain dividing 9 souls, their strength was much greater than that of dividing 4 souls monarch tiers. This was an absolutely one-sided suppression. And it was also because of these repeated losses that the Celestial Realm did not dare to easily agree to starting an Immortal Palace tier competition with the foreign realm. Why? That was because while the Celestial Realm had such monarch stars like Ji Wuming and Jia Lan, the cultivation levels of these 4 great monarch stars were too low. As long as the foreign realm had such monarch stars, they only had to attain 2nd secret or 3rd secret, and they would be able to suppress Ji Wuming and the others. Hence, they did not dare agree to another match with the foreign realm, fearing that it would result in a complete loss again. If that was the case, the morale of the cultivators of the Celestial Realm would drop to rock bottom. The Celestial Realm would definitely go to war again with the foreign realm, and boost their military morale, which was already very low, but it was definitely not now. At least, it would have to wait until Ji Wuming and the others reached the 5th secret. Thus, in the recent times, the monarch tiers had all been sent into the most dangerous locations, cultivating amidst bloody battles to increase their cultivation level as soon as possible. Of course, the cultivation resources they obtained were also exceedingly high in amount. All kinds of natural treasures were poured on them. This was also one of the reasons for why Li Hongfei and the others hated Ling Han. They felt that those like him had been rewarded without any efforts, and this was unfair for the citizens of Clear Heaven Pass. On the other side, the connecting point between the two realms had become more and more stable. Perhaps, after another while, even heavenly venerable tier power would be able to pass. By then, it would not be minor skirmishes like this, but a full-out war. Hence, the present generation had to mature as quickly as possible. After Ling Han settled down, he immediately entered into the Black Tower to concoct alchemical pills so that the Empress and the others could break through to the Immortal Palace tier as soon as possible. Only a day had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han had concocted enough 1,000-year dream pills, which would be sufficient for them to enter the time mystery realm a few more times. Chapter 22-25 Neutral Zone. Ling Han cultivated inside the Black Tower, and the Empress and the others continued to ingest the 1,000-year dream pills and attempt to break through to the Immortal Palace tier. There was no concept of time inside the time mystery realm, and the Black Tower had 10,000 times acceleration effects. Hence, only a single day had passed in the outside world, but the Empress and the others could attempt to break through to the Immortal Palace tier several times. The prerequisite was that there were enough thousand-year dream pills. 3 days later, Huang was the first to break through, and the Empress also broke through in quick succession a while after her. Then, another day passed, and the Rain Emperor had also successfully broken through to the Immortal Palace tier. The Rain Emperor had been slower because a dividing 9 souls breaking through to the Immortal Palace tier was clearly more difficult. Another 2 days later, Bewitching Maiden Ro finally broke through to the Immortal Palace tier. And at this time, Xueqi had also issued a command. The 17th camp would be mobilizing fully, and entering into the neutral zone for practice. In this neutral zone, the regulations of the two realms had clashed fiercely, ripping apart the earth, and turning the world upside down. Regulations had turned into shards, and a great many monsters had also come into existence. They did not belong to the celestial realm, nor the foreign realm, and were independent of the world. The Rain Emperor and the others also reported, and had all been taken into the 17th camp of Unit D, led by Xueqi. In this camp, aside from the outstanding students of Saintly Origin Academy, there was also the younger generation of natives of Clear Heaven Pass, and they had formed a group. There were many other such groups, and their goal was to improve everyone's cultivation level as quickly as possible through the cruelties of battle. There were a total of 214 people in the 17th camp, and 10 to 12 people would make up a small team, and every team would have a team leader. Because Xueqi and his group had come late, they were split apart and distributed among these 20 teams, so they were not together. Though they had requested to be placed together, Xueqi had not agreed, so they could only settle for this arrangement temporarily. With Xueqi leading, they exited the Clear Heaven Pass, and entered into that neutral zone. After walking for half a day, Xueqi had the 20 team leaders lead their teams and move freely. The team leader of Xueqi's team was Shen Chao, a native of Clear Heaven Pass. His cultivation level had reached the 5th secret Immortal Palace tier, and he was a monarch tier at that, which was very extraordinary. Though Clear Heaven Pass looked barren and inhospitable, with poor conditions, the military and harsh environment had produced countless prodigies, and Shen Chao was only one of them. He could not be considered one of the highest tier of prodigies. Like Li Hongfei and the others, Shen Chao did not particularly have positive feelings towards disciples of Saintly Origin Academy. The gaze he swept over them carried a powerful disdain, and he treated the 5 disciples of Saintly Origin Academy in his team with great contempt. Young Master Han. The 4 other students of Saintly Origin Academy naturally recognized Ling Han, and greeted him respectively. The 4 of them were all at the Dividing Soul tier, and it just so happened that there was one at Heaven Soul, Earth Soul, Yin Soul, and Yang Soul respectively. They should have been deliberately arranged in this manner. Ling Han nodded, and surveyed his surroundings. They had already entered into a valley. One side of the valley wall had a crack that was as wide as 9 meters, and if he gazed within, its depths were unfathomable, and he could not see the bottom at all. And if he released his divine sense within, it would be like a mud bowl sinking into the ocean, instantly disappearing. This space had been warped and destroyed, and it was no ordinary void, either, but rather one formed through the collision of 2 words. No one knew exactly what the situation was inside. Perhaps only a celestial king could enter and explore, but this place was suppressed by the heaven and earth of the 2 realms. Even an ascending origin tier could not enter, and it was even more impossible for a celestial king. If they barged in forcefully, it would only cause themselves to shatter. This zone had not appeared a very long time ago. What Ling Han and his group were to do was, firstly, to train themselves, and secondly, to draw out a map of this place. In the future, this would be the great battlefield in the war between the 2 realms, and they had to get a clear grasp of the situation here. Of course, someone had to have already investigated the situation here, and confirmed the level of danger here. Otherwise, they would not have been allowed to recklessly enter this place. Shen Chao split the team into 4 groups, with 2 to 3 people in each group. Then he had them move separately to observe the terrain, and draw the map. There were a total of 3 people in Ling Han's small group. Aside from him, the other 2 were both students of the Saintly Origin Academy. One was called Lu Zhen, and the other was called Mei Hua, and they were Yin Soul and Earth Soul, respectively, so it was natural that they looked to him for leadership. They had been delegated to the western parts of the valley. The environment here was utterly terrible and the path very craggy and rugged, covered with sharp rocks that were like blades, and were capable of easily piercing through the soles of their feet. Because there were no regulations of the celestial realm here, they naturally were not able to fly. It was not impossible for them to fly by force, but it would expend the regulations locked within their bodies. But who knew what kind of dangers there were in this place? Once the regulations were exhausted, their strength would be dropping to the Genesis tier. Yet Ling Han did not have such reservations, because he had the Black Tower. Even if the Black Tower was a heavenly Venerate precious treasure, it could not form regulations, either. However, it could absorb a great amount of regulations and accumulate them, and the volume far surpassed the amount that could be locked within Ling Han's own body. If it had to be compared, that would be equivalent to the amount that one or even several ninth heaven celestial kings could store up. This meant that Ling Han could use regulations without reservations. No matter how much an Immortal Palace tier used regulations, how long would they have to use regulations to be able to exhaust a ninth heaven celestial king? It was practically impossible. He naturally would not be bringing up this kind of thing. This was his trump card. In the future, if anyone wanted to fight him one after another in hopes of exhausting his energy, that would be basically pointless effort. Instead, it would allow him to find weaknesses and gain victory. They all used regulations to safeguard themselves, so their bodies were slightly afloat to avoid being wounded by the sharp rocks, and this was not too exhausting of the regulations, either. Huang, a strange creature, suddenly appeared. Its upper body was human, but its lower body was like a fierce tiger. Its whole body exuded a crystalline luster, was capable of absorbing light, and had a powerful ability of invisibility. Thus, Ling Han and his group were all slightly taken off guard when it appeared. It pounced towards Ling Han and the others, its hands flourishing. Boom! It created a powerful wave. It wasn't that there were no regulations in this place, just that the regulations here could not be used by the cultivators of the two realms. However, the creatures that were born here were not limited by this restriction. As it launched its attack, there were many afterimages. Lu Zhan exclaimed lightly, and took the initiative to greet the incoming blow. Pang pang pang. They were immediately fighting intensely. At first, Ling Han was unconcerned as this creature's battle prowess was only around Earth Soul, but he soon became intrigued because the regulations that this creature used were extremely strange. They did not belong to the celestial realm, but were not part of the foreign realm. Either after the two worlds had collided, two types of regulations also clashed, creating a great change. In other words, this was a small world that was independent of both the celestial realm and the foreign realm. However, the overall level of regulations here was too low, and had suppressed the cultivation levels of the beings here. For example, only Immortal Palace tiers could enter this space, which meant that the upper limit of the regulations here was also the Immortal Palace tier. However, this world had just been formed, and the regulations still had a great space for growth. Its limits could still be further raised, and perhaps could reach the level of Ascending Origin tier, or even Celestial King tier. Interesting, Ling Han thought, and an idea came to him. If he could comprehend the regulations here, then wouldn't it mean that he would also be able to comprehend the regulations of the foreign realm after he went there? This place was formed by the collision of two realms, and that was the same for regulations as well. It had the regulations of the celestial realm as well as the regulations of the foreign realm. If Ling Han couldn't even comprehend the regulations here, how would he be able to comprehend the regulations of the foreign realm then? Chapter 22-26. New Heaven and Earth. Lu Zhan and that strange creature fought fiercely, locked in a tight battle. Because this zone had come into being only recently, and had formed unique creatures that had grasp of unique regulations, Ling Han could not judge whether this creature was an Earth Soul Emperor tier, a Heaven Soul King tier, or something else. Their understanding of this region and the new creatures in this region was zero. But Ling Han was sure that since Lu Zhan could not win in a short time, then it was definite that he definitely would not be able to. The reason was very simple. The regulations stored up in his body would be exhausted quickly, and by then, his battle prowess would drop drastically, and he would be easily killed by this creature. Though Lu Zhan also knew this fact, he did not panic, because there was Ling Han standing behind him. If he could no longer battle, once Ling Han moved, he would be able to instantly suppress his opponent. For the moment, Ling Han had no plans to move. He was studying the unique regulations of this place. Directly comprehending the regulations was as difficult as ascending the heavens, just like if he were to enter into a different cultivation system without a guide. This was practically an impossible feat. Merely the regulations in his body would be endlessly expelling his attempts. But now that there was a creature of this place attacking, it provided reference material for Ling Han, so he had a sliver of hope to grasp the regulations of this place from the attacks of this creature. However, when the battle had reached the 8th hour, Lu Zhen suddenly fell into an exhausted state. He had not been able to suppress that creature, yet the regulations in his body were more or less exhausted, and he had thus sunk into a dilemma. Though he knew that there would be no danger to his life, his expression was still ugly. As an emperor tier, he naturally had great pride, and thought that there was no opponent he could not suppress, yet that wasn't the case now, which made his expression look ugly. Ling Han still did not move. For cultivators, life and death experiences were extremely important as they could better excite one's potential. Of course, Lu Zhen knew that he would definitely interfere, so it wasn't possible that his potential would be completely forced out. This was fine though. In any case, Ling Han had no intentions of nurturing this person. Merely on the basis that they were both people of the celestial realm, he was willing to give him a chance. After fighting for another 30 minutes, Lu Zhen was in repeated danger. Blood would be streaming from his body endlessly, but he was still quite proud. For the whole period, he had not asked for Ling Han's help. However, his circumstances were worsening. That creature suddenly turned its hand into a blade that stabbed at his forehead. This attack was both quick and harsh. Strange seals flickered on its arm. If Lu Zhen was pierced through, it was probable that he would be dead in the present circumstances. Ling Han was slightly surprised. When the battle had progressed until now, this creature's battle prowess had actually been increasing all the while, though the rate was extremely small. However, with his insight, he naturally could notice this fact. It seemed as if this creature had initially had absolutely zero battle experience, yet now it was slowly being enlightened. It could be said that this region was still in a state of world creation. Thus, the creatures here were extremely primitive, and cultivation had just begun to develop. Every creature had a great room for growth. As he thought this, Ling Han moved carelessly, capturing that creature in a single stroke. Then he flung it onto the ground. Pang, a deep bottomless pit was created in the ground, and that creature had already disappeared completely. Yet Ling Han was slightly dumbfounded. If he were to throw it at some other place, it was probable that a great explosion would take place in the nearest 50 kilometers, and everything would sink in, yet now there was actually just a tiny pit like this, which showed how sturdy the structure of the heaven and earth in this place was. He stretched out his hand, and as his origin power surged, he plucked that creature from underground. Both Lu Zhen and Mei Hua exclaimed in shock. Though this creature's limbs were drooping, there were actually no wounds on it at all. It should be known that it had been harshly flung by a first secret monarch tier. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and tugged at the hide of this creature. Pa! It bounced back, showing an astonishing elasticity. This defense is quite shocking. He nodded. No wonder I couldn't wound it at all even after hitting it so many times. Lu Zhen inhaled sharply. Previously, it was indeed he that was at a slight advantage, and hit that creature a good many times, but he still did not manage to win. Ling Han mumbled, the world is newly created, and the first batch of creatures would be called source beasts. Their battle prowess far surpasses the creatures that would be born in later generations. Young Master Han, are you saying that this is a new heaven and earth? Both Lu Zhen and Mei Hua exclaimed in shock. They knew that this was a zone that had been created from the collision of the two realms, but they had never thought of anything else. Ling Han nodded. The power of the heaven and earth was strongest, and that was why they could suppress heavenly venerates. Thus, the heavenly venerates of the foreign realm could not come in here. They could only wait until the connecting point between the two realms stabilized to unleash their strongest offensive. Regulations were only subsidiary to the heaven and earth. This place was like a new heaven and earth, and it was definite that a batch of powerful creatures that belonged to this heaven and earth would be created. However, the heaven and earth here was still too young. The regulations were limited to the Immortal Palace tier, so the strongest creature should only be the strongest of the Immortal Palace tier. It could not be helped. This heaven and earth were only formed through the collision of two original heaven and earth. Strictly speaking, this was only a zone, and not an actual heaven and earth. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and placed it on the head of that creature, moving to read its memories. Woo! He suddenly stumbled backwards, blood dripping from his nose and eyes. He felt his heart beating extremely hard, as if it was about to explode. He couldn't help but feel shocked. It should be known that he had cultivated his heart into the first mystery realm of the human body, and regulations of time were active there. Even then, it had still almost exploded, so it could be imagined just how dangerous it had been. Young Master Han. Lu Zhan and Mei Hua hurriedly supported Ling Han from either side. Ling Han stood firm and waved them off, saying, "I'm fine, but you two must not attempt to extract the memories of this creature. It is too dangerous." Lu Zhan and Mei Hua both nodded. Even Ling Han had come off so badly, so if they really did that, that would definitely be suicidal. Ling Han wiped away the blood on his face. He did not give up, and placed his hand down once more. Boom, a frightening aura filled with primal chaos surged towards him, as if capable of swallowing everything. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll to stand off against it. Huang, multiple streaks of golden light appeared on his body, turning into many ancient seals. They were not recognized by the heaven and earth, because Lu Zhan and Mei Hua glimpsed them for a while before complete darkness filled their vision. Their minds were completely empty, with nothing imprinted at all. This was the true meaning of the Great Tao that surpassed regulations of the Great Tao. It could be considered as another type of regulations of the Great Tao, so it was natural that they could not possibly study it. Without the Black Tower, Ling Han wouldn't have been able to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll at all, unless he had reached Heavenly Venerable tier, and gone back to cultivate from the beginning again. What meaning would there be to do that? The air of primal chaos swallowed Ling Han's soul completely, or rather assimilated him, dragging him into an endless darkness. Understanding rose up in Ling Han. This was a fusion of the regulations of both realms, so the creatures here inevitably carried the air of the foreign realm, which was filled with slaughter and murderous intent, as well. He attempted to decipher the regulations within, but discovered that this was completely pointless. The regulations here were all shards, and could not be studied at all. They could only be formed naturally by the heaven and earth. It could not be helped. This was not a real world, but a small zone that had been created from the collision of two worlds and two different types of regulations. However, through these shards of regulations, he had grasped some bits of the regulations of the foreign realm. Chapter 22-27, I. At least 2 hours later, Ling Han finally released his hold. He could feel stickiness on his face, and when he touched it, he discovered that his hand was actually covered with bloody scabs. When he had been standing off against the heaven and earth's willpower inside that creature, his physical body actually could not bear it any longer. Blood flowed continuously from his orifices, and that was why his whole face was covered in blood. He shook his body, and not only was it his face, blood had also seeped out of his body all over, all congealing into bloody scabs, and almost turning him into a monster as well. However, as he was sustaining the barrage of regulations of a foreign creature, it was the same for that creature, yet it was not as strong as Ling Han, and had already turned into a corpse. Every single inch of its body had cracked apart, yet it was exuding a refreshing fragrance. Actually, Ling Han had not been standing off against this creature, but rather the regulations of this place, and the result was that he had barely managed to resist them. After all, this was willpower of heaven and earth. The fact that he hadn't been killed was already a display of his absolute strength. "This is celestial medicine," Lu Zhen suddenly exclaimed. He spread apart the body of that creature, and there was actually a tiny herb nurtured in its heart. It had borne 7 fruits, and the refreshing fragrance was exuded from the fruits. Ling Han took it out for a look, and his brow involuntarily wrinkled in a frown. This celestial medicine should be corresponding to this space, so it would probably be very hard to benefit us if we were to ingest it. He pondered for a while, and still passed 2 fruits to Lu Zhan and Mei Hua. "Just take it first and we'll see." Lu Zhan and Mei Hua naturally would not refuse. No matter how strange it was, a celestial medicine was still a celestial medicine. They did not dare say anything about how Ling Han had taken 5 fruits for himself, because this creature had been killed by Ling Han alone. Even if he had not given them anything, it would have been completely acceptable. That was a celestial medicine, so giving them a portion was already extremely generous. Ling Han stowed away the celestial medicine, as well as the corpse of this creature. He was very intrigued by this place, and planned to study it carefully. They continued onwards, and arrived at their targeted area. Then, they began a careful observation, drafting the map. "Young Master Han, come and look." Lu Zhen suddenly ran over. Ling Han walked off with him, and saw there was a small dark cave in one of the walls of the valley. That's it? Ling Han was surprised. What was so interesting about this? Young Master Han, patience, Lu Zhen said. After a long while of waiting, Ling Han suddenly felt a great pull, which sucked him towards that cave. He hurriedly channeled the power of regulation, and his body immediately stopped. However, Lu Zhen did not have that kind of strength, and his body was rapidly falling forwards. Thankfully, he had long since prepared himself. As he moved his body to get rid of the force, he prevented his body from falling. However, this sucking force only persisted for a while, and soon disappeared. Strange. Ling Han went to the cave mouth, and extended his divine sense inwards. His divine sense entered for over 50 kilometers, and there was not the slightest change with the cave mouth. It was extremely narrow, and when it reached over 500 kilometers, this was already close to Ling Han's limits. In this heaven and earth, his divine sense would also be greatly restricted. He could still continue further, yet suddenly a feeling of danger rose up in him, and his divine sense abruptly returned inside his body like a subsiding tide. A chill suddenly assaulted him. Ling Han felt as if he had been targeted by some dangerous thing. This feeling was extremely bad, causing sweat to break out on his forehead involuntarily, and his back was damp with sweat as well. He looked again at that cave mouth, and all his hair was suddenly standing on ends. An eye! He saw an eye that was focused on him, emotionless and cold. Young Master Han. Lu Zhen hurriedly approached, and also looked towards the cave mouth, but he did not see anything. Ling Han waved a hand, and then glanced back at the cave mouth again. This time, he did not see anything. We leave immediately. Though Lu Zhen was slightly confused, they had more or less completed their mission, so he did not raise any objections. Moreover, it was useless even if he did object. How could he influence Ling Han's decision? They called Mei Hua over, and practically fled in a panic. Only at the moment they stepped out of the valley did the chill in Ling Han's heart gradually retreat. He could be certain that that was definitely not an illusion. Beneath this valley, a terrifying creature was hidden. To cause such wariness from a first secret monarch star like himself, it would definitely surpass the level of the Immortal Palace tier. An ascending origin tier. But didn't this heaven and earth only permit beings of the Immortal Palace tier? No, this heaven and earth had just formed recently, and the regulations were also evolving. In that case, what would be so strange about ascending origin tier creatures coming into being? However, the regulations had not been perfected after all, so that creature was not able to emerge, and could only spy on them. Otherwise, perhaps he, too, would not have been able to leave the valley just now. Of course, if he did not mind exposing the Black Tower, that ascending origin tier creature would not be able to threaten him, either. I have to improve my physique as soon as possible, Ling Han thought. However, at his present level, the improvement of his physique was not something that could be accomplished as simply as being struck by lightning, but would rather need endless amounts of celestial medicines working together with the indestructible heaven scroll to temper his physique. In other words, he needed money. Money, he was really lacking money. Why have you guys come back? Shen Chao appeared, his eyes sweeping over Ling Han and the others, a hint of displeasure in his expression. The mission is complete, Ling Han stated calmly, and threw over the map that they had drafted. Shen Chao grabbed it, and swept over it with his divine sense, yet he could not show any dissatisfaction, because this map had indeed been completed. I also have a matter to report to Lord Nye, Ling Han continued. Shen Chao immediately humphed. You can report to me about whatever it is. Why do you have to skip over me to make your report to a higher official? Furthermore, is this map of yours accurate? It can't be that you guys simply drafted it carelessly just to go through the motions, right? Ling Han frowned and replied in displeasure, I am not that idle. You dare to quibble with me? Shen Chao demanded menacingly, and his eyes immediately became dangerous. Ling Han knew that the other man had a natural prejudice against students of saintly origin academy, but knowing it was one thing. Why was there any need for him to humble himself in front of the other man? He stated calmly, Aren't you the one that is causing unnecessary trouble? How dare you? Shen Chao shouted angrily, and suddenly moved to grab out at Ling Han. He was a 5th secret monarch tier, and his strength was naturally world-shaking. Light of Tao blazed, as if he was a supreme overlord. Ling Han was very strong. When he had been at dividing 9 souls, he had been equivalent to a first secret Immortal Palace tier, and now that he had further advanced into the Immortal Palace tier, that was naturally equivalent to having formed his second mystery realm, but even if he was a monarch tier, that was only comparable to third secret, and there was still a very great gap between him and a fifth secret monarch tier. Taking it head-on? That was only going to be suicidal. Ling Han used void space and manifested millions of himself. Though he had split out the 9 source powers of heaven and earth, the brand of the 9 source powers of heaven and earth had been left in his body, and the abilities he had grasped would not disappear. Instead, he could continue to deduce the secrets of the source powers through these brands. Boom! Xin Chao's grab completely missed its target. Yet he only smirked coldly. That had only been a casual move of his, yet Ling Han had already used a powerful move. What did that signify? In the outside world it would not have much effect, but this was an independent zone. One could only expend the regulations that were locked in their body, and this meant that every person's battle prowess would be equivalent to a small pool. Once it was completely exhausted, they would be completely rendered useless. At present, Ling Han could dodge his attacks as much as possible, but how long could he continue dodging for? He moved mercilessly, wanting to push Ling Han to his limits as soon as possible. Chapter 22-28 Battle. Shen Chao was really very strong. Every casual movement from him was lethal, possessing astonishingly strong might. A fifth secret monarch tier was really too powerful. If Ling Han had chosen to clash with Shen Chao head-on, he would have probably been severely injured and killed with a few strikes. However, he had once possessed 9 source powers of heaven and earth, and the first mystery realm that he had cultivated had been tempered with the power of time. Thus, his battle prowess far surpassed his cultivation level. At the very least, he was indeed numbingly powerful in terms of evasion and flight. Void space was used, and he formed countless manifestations, and even when Xin Chao used a wide-range lethal technique, destroying the entire void space in a single stroke, he still had the regulations of time. He slowed down the attacks that came towards him by 10,000 times, and then calmly escaped, completely at ease. Even Xin Chao had to admit that he was impressed by Ling Han's abilities, but this only made his pride even more intense. He shot out blow after blow, determined to take Ling Han down. "I never thought that you are actually a monarch star," he said. "However, even as a monarch star, you have only come now. You have no view of the greater picture here. Even if such a monarch star became a 9th heaven celestial king, so what? You would only surrender when you encounter danger." His expression was menacing. "Rather than having you turn around and cause harm to the celestial realm, it would be better to kill you here." His killing intent blazed, and his attacks became harsher. This time, he was really aiming to take Ling Han's life. Ling Han's expression was cold. Perhaps, Shen Chao's intentions were really for the sake of the celestial realm, but what did this have to do with him? "You want to kill me, so don't tell me that I have to welcome it with a smile?" He merely channeled the regulations of time and space, continuing to evade Shen Chao's attacks. The regulations of space were already very mysterious, and the regulations of time were superior to all other regulations. The use thereof was extremely simple, and that was slowing down or speeding up the flow of time in a small capacity, or even freezing time. Though there were only 3 effects, each was extremely powerful in battle. If it could affect everything, Ling Han could kill even a celestial king. Shen Chao had also begun to greatly exhaust his energy. In any case, his cultivation level was higher than Ling Han's, and the regulations locked up in his body were definitely greater in amount than Ling Han. In that case, he only had to expend at a slightly slower rate than Ling Han, and it would definitely be Ling Han that would be completely exhausted of his regulations. This thought was very logical, but he would never have predicted that Ling Han still had a treasure like the Black Tower, so his power of regulation was endless. The two of them fought fiercely, but it was Shen Chao that was attacking on Ling Han, while Ling Han was endlessly evading. As time passed, more and more people returned. Seeing Ling Han battling fiercely with Shen Chao, they all stopped and watched while asking what was going on. Lu Zhan and Mei Hua related the happenings. The natives would all look disdainful, and thought that Ling Han should indeed be taught a lesson, while the other two disciples of the Saintly Origin Academy were secretly cheering Ling Han on. Because they were overwhelmed in numbers, they did not dare to voice their encouragement. However, the circumstances could not be any more clearer. How was a first secret supposed to match a fifth secret? What more when this fifth secret was a monarch tier at that? If it were not for the fact that he could not replenish his regulations here, which affected Shen Chao's performance, he would have long since won. Even so, Ling Han was still sustaining injuries continuously. Celestial blood scattered and landed on the mountain rock, turning the variety of rocks into dust. Of course, this was a deliberate move from Ling Han. If Shen Chao was not given a bit of the sweet taste of victory, why would he continue to battle? Another hour later, everyone had returned to their starting point, and saw the fierce battle between Ling Han and Shen Chao. At this time, Shen Chao was also slightly anxious. They had already battled for so long, yet he still had not managed to take Ling Han down or completely exhaust Ling Han's energy. Though the latter was covered with injuries, and it seemed like he would collapse at the next blow, he always seemed to miraculously continue. Instead, the regulations in his body were decreasing further and further. Though he had cultivated 5 human body mystery realms, and the regulations that he could lock up in his body were astonishingly great in amount, there would definitely come an eventual end when there was only output and no input. By now, he was close to arriving at this end. Everlasting world, strike of the Big Dipper, he shouted loudly. After storing up energy for a long time, he blasted out a powerful attack. Suddenly, the skies were completely filled with golden blades that were formed from origin power. Regulations of metal entwined around them, and they swept out madly towards Ling Han. The range of this strike was extraordinarily wide, enshrouding the void space that Ling Han had unfolded completely, and Shen Chao was also boosting it with a great amount of regulations of metal, without thought of the costs. He was determined to break through the lockdown of Ling Han's regulations of time, and deliver a supremely powerful blow. Ling Han chuckled, and took the initiative to channel the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Xiao xiao xiao. Endless golden blades descended, practically stabbing into the entirety of the whole valley. Everyone was astonished. When this blow fell, was there any possibility that Ling Han would still be alive? The regulations here were incompatible with the celestial realm. Thus, the golden blades formed by the regulations soon crumbled and vanished, but dust was still blown around the area, scraps of rock shooting out. The might of this attack was really too powerful. However, after the dust cleared, everyone showed expressions of shock. That was because Ling Han was still standing firmly. Though there were traces of blood on him, the aura he exuded was incredibly dominant, and there was a boundless rage boiling. A strange feeling rose up in everyone's hearts, making them feel an urge of wanting to kneel down and worship Ling Han. Ling Han opened his eyes. There was blood at the corners of his eyes, yet it did not affect his domineering air in the slightest. Instead, it made his gaze become even harsher and firmer. He looked at Shen Chao, his fighting spirit soaring into a song that crackled loudly. Even if Shen Chao was a monarch tier, so what? Faced with this kind of Ling Han, his heart was also beginning to chill. And what was worse? There had already been less of his power of regulation in the first place, and now, after unleashing such a powerful move, the power of regulation in his body was already close to empty, and his battle prowess would definitely be severely discounted. More importantly, how had Ling Han been able to sustain that strike from him? Furthermore, was his body a bottomless pit, actually having been able to lock up so much power of regulations? It's my turn now. Ling Han spat out each word one by one. Xiao, he took a step, and his body immediately sped up. Instantly, he appeared in front of Shen Chao, shooting out a powerful punch. Humph! Shen Chao was unafraid. Even if his battle prowess had declined greatly, he was still superior to Ling Han. Previously, Ling Han had been able to contend with him, not because he was all that powerful, but rather because he was constantly dodging, and now he was confronting him forcefully. Wasn't that just courting death? Thinking that his regulations were close to exhaustion, he thought that he could turn his defeat around into a victory. Too naive. The two people clashed furiously. Pang, pang, pang. As expected, it was still Shen Chao that was stronger. Ling Han would be throwing up blood with every blow, but he merely channeled the regulations of wood of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and his injuries would be rapidly recovering. However, Shen Chao was too strong, so strong that his rate of recovery was completely unable to keep up. Very soon, he was battered all over, exposing eerily white bones. However, Ling Han merely channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body immediately recovered to its prime condition. He looked at Shen Chao coldly. He only felt a soaring fighting spirit, without the slightest bit of emotion. This time, Shen Chao was really scared. Are you a undead monster? Having sustained such serious injuries, you can still manage to remain standing, and can actually unleash such wild fighting spirit at that. What can you be if not a monster? Ling Han did not speak. Xiao, he attacked once more, and his fists launched a fierce barrage, using the fists of fury. This time, he was really mad with fury, and had entered completely into the intent realm of fists of fury. Images of his fists filled the skies. Fight, 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 alright, fight. He would fight until he pierced open the skies, destroyed the earth, and fought to his heart's content. Chapter 22-29. Beat you to your heart's content. Shen Chao could no longer endure. Originally, he had already been close to the end of his line. Previously, though he had been able to counter aggressively, that had only been short-lived. The regulations in his body were already exhausted completely, and his battle prowess had fallen down to rock bottom. Now, to say nothing that it was Ling Han, any random severing mundane tear would have been able to suppress Shen Chao easily. Pang! Ling Han's fist slammed into Shen Chao's face, instantly causing a nosebleed. However, Ling Han had obviously controlled his force. Otherwise, it would not have been a matter of a little bloodshed with this punch, but rather his whole head would have exploded. Was not Ling Han, who had a tough physique. Aren't you very arrogant? Ling Han slammed another punch over. Go on then, continue being arrogant. He would follow each word with a punch, and Shen Chao's whole face was immediately bruised and battered all over, quickly swelling to the size of a pig's head. Did I trifle with you? No. Yet you are so determined to come and trifle with me. Are you wretched? I have always had one way of dealing with wretches, and that is to beat them up. His punches did not end, and the sounds of cracking bones were soon heard from Shen Chao's body as Ling Han had broken his bones, or even smashed them to bits. Shen Chao could only moan in agony. Who made it a rule that a monarch tier could not cry in pain when he was being beaten? The natives were all furious, and summoned their respective weapons, aimed straight at Ling Han. Let him go, they demanded coldly. However, even the strongest elite among them was only a fourth secret emperor tier. After all, how could there be so many monarch tiers? Even in this militaristic battlefield, there could not possibly be so many. One of Ling Han's hands gripped the front of Shen Chao's robes as he surveyed the masses. The blood on his face had not been wiped off, and as his cold eyes swept over them, everyone felt a chill rise up from the depths of their heart, and they actually stepped back continuously. This drove the natives into a rage due to humiliation. They dared to rush up and fight any of the foreign race they saw. Since childhood, they had seen many assaults on the city that the foreign race launched. When was it that no masses of dead people fell from Clear Heaven Pass, as if it was a shower of rain? Even this did not make them feel afraid, yet they had stepped back with just a glance from Ling Han. How could they bear with that? Let's go. They stepped forwards again, and charged onwards, unleashing a united offensive against Ling Han. Ling Han smirked coldly. Using Shen Chao as a weapon, he flung him around in a mad sweep towards them. Everyone refrained from attacking, fearing that harm would come to Shen Chao. They did not dare to attack too strongly at all. You are too shameless. You're not a man. The natives were all shouting, all of them stomping in fury, and also trying to spur Ling Han on so that he could release Shen Chao and battle them himself. How could Ling Han possibly pay them any regard? He merely waved Shen Chao around to attack them, and his battle prowess was indeed far surpassing all the others. Aside from that fourth secret emperor tier, who else could withstand a few blows from him? Pang, pang, pang. Figures danced in the skies one after another. They had been kicked or sent flying out by Ling Han, all sprawling out on the ground. Finally, only that fourth secret emperor tier was left, and Ling Han used the regulations of time to bind him. The flow of time had slowed down over 10,000 times, so he could only watch helplessly as Ling Han slammed Shen Chao into him. The two of them were instantly battered and tangled up together. Mei Hua, Lu Zhan, and the other disciples of the academy were all looking at Ling Han with incredible admiration. This was too amazing, and they were completely astounded. He was just a first secret, yet could even defeat a fifth secret monarch tier. His strength was indescribable. They also could not understand why Ling Han's power seemed to be endless. He could not be replenished with regulations here. Even a fifth secret monarch tier had been defeated. Then, was there anyone that could be Ling Han's match in this heaven and earth? Half a day later, everyone finally regained consciousness one after another, moaning endlessly as they lay on the ground. Shen Chao had also awakened. He did not make any sound, and would occasionally glance at Ling Han when he wasn't paying attention, his expression filled with puzzlement. In terms of true battle prowess, he was definitely superior to Ling Han, but the power of regulation that Ling Han could use was endless, and he actually managed to exhaust him to defeat. Of course, if it were not for the fact that Ling Han had an amazing movement technique, and was skilled in the regulations of time, and also had an astonishing recovery ability, he would not have been able to last so long either. But all these factors added together turned Ling Han into a miracle, a first secret who had defeated him, who was a fifth secret. Monarch stars were indeed very impressive, but if he was only a first secret, he could match a third secret monarch tier at most. He definitely could not match a fifth secret monarch star. This young man was practically a freak. Ling Han coughed and said, "Since everyone is conscious now, let's go back." Everyone remained silent. They had been defeated even when they had an overwhelming advantage in numbers and strength. These natives had all become cocks that had lost a fight, losing all of their arrogance completely. Meanwhile, Lu Zhan and the others were all incredibly excited. Since they entered the 17th camp, the natives had treated them with extreme contempt, and they had even suffered some losses. Now that Ling Han had shown his might here, the natives had lost all their temper, which had naturally vented some of their frustrations. Ling Han led the way, and they set out, heading towards Clear Heaven Pass. A long while later, they had finally walked out of the neutral zone. At this time, Xueqi and the other 19 teams had long since been waiting here. Seeing everyone looking crestfallen, as if they had suffered some serious blow, the others asked them what had happened, and thought that they had encountered an attack from some super powerful monster. "Han Lin, I will smash you into pulp." Shen Chao's body shook, and the light of regulations returned. He had recovered his strength. This place was already the territory of the celestial realm, and he could again channel the power of regulation, so he had completely recovered to his prime condition. Ling Han ignored him completely, and directly walked towards Xueqi. "You are courting death." Shen Chao roared furiously, and set off in hot pursuit of Ling Han, sending out a punch. Huang! His movement suddenly stopped, as if an invisible power had completely taken control of his body. Xueqi showed a hint of displeasure in his expression, and he demanded, as the team leader and a fifth secret monarch tier, "You think you can bully your teammates?" It was he that had moved to subdue Shen Chao. It was naturally completely effortless since it was an ascending origin tier elite that had moved. Shen Chao's expression was completely defiant. Thus, he was also glaring angrily at Xueqi. He was a fifth secret monarch tier, and once he advanced into ascending origin tier, his battle prowess would not be inferior to Xueqi's. Thus, he did not hold much respect for Xueqi. Not too long after, he would be able to advance into this level as well, and become his equal, or even emerge completely superior over the other. "Step down." Xueqi humphed lightly, his one eye exuding a boundless chill. Shen Chao's face paled, and he involuntarily stepped backwards. There was a wide gulf between the Immortal Palace tier and Ascending Origin tier. Without forming 11 mystery realms, how could he possibly be the man's match? Meanwhile, Ling Han said, "Lord Nye, I discovered a strange place within the valley." He related the situation that he had experienced, including that eye that had vanished in a flash. Hearing him say these words, a considerable number of people scoffed mockingly. What a joke! How could there be an ascending origin tier existence in the neutral zone? It should be known that even a ninth heaven celestial king could not possibly enter within, as they would be crushed forcefully by the majestic power of heaven and earth. Could ascending origin tier compare with ninth heaven celestial king tier? Thus, after Nyehashan heard this, he merely nodded carelessly and said, "I will make further investigations." Yet, he had absolutely no intentions of pursuing the matter. It was clear from his expression. Waving a hand, he commanded that they were to return. Ling Han was going to speak further, yet Nyehashan had absolutely no intention of paying him any regard, so he could only dismiss that thought. After returning to the campsite, Ling Han began to study the celestial medicine he had obtained and that creature. Chapter 2230. Docking Pay. It was possible that the neutral zone was presently nurturing an ascending origin tier creature. For Clear Heaven Pass, this matter was actually not all that important, because what was an ascending origin tier worth? Any random celestial king would be able to crush it to dust. Hence, Ling Han thought for a moment, and did not waste time on this matter. After all, nothing would happen as long as he was careful. Moreover, if that creature could emerge, it meant that the neutral zone would be able to admit ascending origin tier power. Then, the celestial realm would also be able to allow the entry of ascending origin tier powerhouses, and they could suppress it as well. With this in mind, Ling Han decided to set the matter aside for no off course. He was not going to give it up so easily. He was studying that celestial medicine and strange creature inside the Black Tower. The neutral zone was indeed strange. Celestial medicines did not grow in the ground, but rather in the bodies of living creatures. Hold on, is this a new form of life? Ling Han suddenly paused. The celestial medicine and fierce beast coexisted in one body. As expected, only a new heaven and earth could give rise to such a creature. Still, what is the use of this celestial medicine? Ling Han took a fruit and consumed it. Suddenly, an expansive power surged in his body. There was a slightly familiar side to it, but it also had an extremely evil side, but the larger composition was a never-before-seen powerful energy. He felt it carefully. The two realms clash, but the regulations have not completely merged. Thus, one part of the celestial medicine is the regulations of the celestial realm, and one part belongs to the foreign realm, but more than that, it is made up of completely new regulations that were produced after the two merged. If I have enough celestial medicines, I may be able to deduce some regulations of the foreign realm. Regulations were not universal in use, but the power was the same. This celestial medicine could still boost the level of Ling Han's origin power, pushing it to a higher level. He consumed the remaining celestial fruits, and experienced the effects carefully. In terms of overall level of origin power, he had reached the heights of middle stage first secret, but his comprehension of regulations was still in the early stage, and had practically not moved further. After all, every further step in the Immortal Palace tier would need far too much time. I'll need to get some more celestial medicines, Ling Han mumbled. He was very intrigued by that neutral zone, and wanted even more to find out what kind of creature was being nurtured underground, and it just so happened that after this mission, Nyehashan had also assigned them many days of vacation, allowing them to move freely. Ling Han thus decided to call the Rain Emperor and the others, and venture once more into the neutral zone. He had not yet set out when a great amount of cultivation resources had been sent to the campsite, and they were distributed by the respective team leaders. Chen Long, Sui Bo, Shen Chao called the names of his teammates one after another to distribute the resources. Lu Zhen. The resources he had previously distributed were all to the natives, and Ling Han and the others were the last 5 to be called. Lu Zhen stepped forwards. When Shen Chao tossed him a spatial god tool, he inspected it, and his expression instantly changed as he demanded, "Why is there only just this bit of cultivation resources? What is it? Complaining that it is too little?" Shen Chao glanced at him, a hint of disdain in his expression. He. The other native team members all walked over, arms crossed over their chests as malicious smiles covered their faces. Lu Zhen opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he did not speak and simply stepped aside. Shen Chao's lips twitched slightly, looking extremely contemptuous, and then called out, "Mei Hua." Mei Hua stepped forwards, and after he took a spatial god tool, he similarly looked outraged. This is only 10% of the last distribution. So what? Shen Chao looked at him coldly, his eyes fierce, looking like a fierce tiger that had its eye on prey. Mei Hua was furious, but he dared not speak. He merely clenched his fists and stepped back. The remaining 2 were the same as well. The cultivation resources they obtained were pitifully little, yet they did not dare raise their objections towards Shen Chao. Han Lin. Shen Chao finally called out Ling Han's name. Ling Han walked forwards. Shua. Shen Chao tossed out a spatial god tool. Ling Han grabbed it, and did a sweep with his divine sense. Involuntarily, he smirked coldly. Amazing, there were just 2 starstones. And this was the cultivation resources he deserved? Even the stupidest person would know that could not be possible. Shen Chao had to have docked his pay. He flicked his finger and said, previously, I quite admired you guys. Bleeding and sacrificing for the many generations of celestial realm. However, now I realize that I have been admiring the wrong people. Ling Han glanced over the natives. Those who deserve admiration are your ancestors, and not trash like you. What difference do you people have compared to those outside now? You would only be repelling others, without thinking of the bigger picture at all. With you guys like this, we're supposed to depend on you to guard the borders. That is really the biggest joke ever heard. When these words fell, the expressions of the natives immediately changed in unison. It was not just this small team. Members of the other teams also walked over, glaring at Ling Han, their expressions fierce. When our ancestors were bleeding and sacrificing for the celestial realm, who knows where you were still drinking milk? What right do you have to fault us? What have you done for the celestial realm? The fact that you can stand here today was paid for with the blood and lives of our ancestors. The natives were all calling out loudly, rebuking Ling Han harshly. Ling Han sneered and said, You are all right in what you say. Your ancestors do indeed deserve respect, but what does that have to do with you guys? You are all talking on and on about your ancestors, but does that have anything to do with you? Everyone couldn't help but be silenced. At this moment, they actually couldn't find words to refute Ling Han. All this while, they had always despised those who came from outside, and thought that the latter had enjoyed the peace that they had worked for. But in truth, at present, they indeed had not been doing anything worthwhile, and were just simply continuously pushing others aside. So what? Shen Chao simply chose to be arrogant. Our ancestors have sacrificed so much, so don't tell me that we should not enjoy better treatment? And this is the excuse you are using to dock my cultivation resources? Ling Han laughed loudly. You are truly shameless to the extreme. Do you want to die? Shen Chao looked at Ling Han coldly, his killing intent blazing. Hee hee, isn't the lesson I taught you the last time enough? Ling Han asked with a grin. Instantly, Shen Chao's whole face was flushed red. Losing to Ling Han could be considered an extreme humiliation for him. He was a 5th secret monarch tier, and he had actually lost to a mere 1st secret. Even if the latter was a monarch star, he was not the slightest bit comforted. Now, he had already become a laughing matter. Even those that he had usually looked down on would dare to glance at him in contempt, and he could only leave with a bowed head. All this was because of Ling Han. Are you seeking death? Shen Chao's eyes were spitting fire. Brother Chao, this is the barracks, someone reminded him. If he made a move here, no matter who was in the right, they would all be punished severely. Shen Chao clenched his fists tightly, using so much force that his fingernails had sunk into his flesh, drops of blood seeping out. He forcibly suppressed the urge to commit murder, and exclaimed, Han Lin, make sure you don't let me see you outside. The threat in these words could not be more obvious. As long as Ling Han dared to leave Clear Heaven Pass, he would dare deliver a fatal strike. Ling Han laughed loudly, and crooked a finger at Shen Chao. Come on then, make your move. If you don't, you'd be my grandson. You're seeking death. At first, Shen Chao had already forcefully suppressed his fury, but how could he hold up to such provocation from Ling Han? Immediately, he raised his hands, and blasted towards Ling Han. Pang! Everyone felt their vision blur, and Shen Chao was already sent flying back heavily. Fuck, what kind of magic was going on here? Chapter 2231. Still outmatched. Shen Chao was a 5th secret monarch tier, and his strength definitely surpassed, or even overwhelmed, Ling Han's. This was publicly acknowledged. Previously, he had been no match for Ling Han, but that was because he had been restricted by the environment. He could not get any replenishment of power of regulation within the neutral zone, but Ling Han was extremely freakish. The regulations locked in his body seemed endless, and this had led to Shen Chao's terrible defeat. But this was the soldiers' camp in the territory of the Celestial Realm. Why had Shen Chao been sent flying with a single strike from Ling Han? Ling Han withdrew his hand and stated calmly, "You are still no match for me. How about it? Want another try?" He secretly calmed the throbbing of his chest. He had been able to send Shen Chao flying with a single strike because he had used the Dragon Chi of Dragon Transformation Technique. Cultivating Dragon Transformation Technique could allow a cultivator to reach the heights of an immortal dragon, but what Ling Han valued the most was the subsidiary benefits of Dragon Transformation Technique could cultivate Dragon Chi, store up power, and maybe even form an immortal dragon when it reached the level of Celestial King tier. This allowed him to instantly burst out with 10 times or even 100 times his own strength, and this was what had sent Shen Chao flying with a single blow. But the downside was it could not be maintained for long, and was a technique that belonged completely to the category of expenditure. With Ling Han's present situation, he would be able to strike 4 to 5 times, at most. And Shen Chao was truly a 5th secret monarch tier. This strike had merely sent him backwards, and did not inflict severe injury on him. In fact, it only caused the corners of his lips to bleed slightly. After all, the gap between their cultivation levels was clear. Being able to send Shen Chao backwards with a head-on strike was already an impressive accomplishment. Yet Shen Chao did not know this. He only looked at Ling Han with eyes filled with shock and suspicion, both astonished and defiant. Being outmatched by Ling Han in the neutral zone, he could not say anything. After all, this was not because his battle prowess was inferior. However, he was still outmatched even now. This was a challenge to his self-confidence that he had never experienced before. He was wavering. What if he battled again, and he was still no match for Ling Han? Previously, it had only been seen by the members of a team, but now it was an entire camp. The extent of humiliation naturally would be on a completely different level. "I am not going to believe this." He spat out each word, his confidence reignited. Ling Han merely chuckled, and crossed his arms behind his back. A monarch tier would not give up so easily, of course, even if Shen Chao had already been defeated by him once, and had just suffered a slight loss only moments ago. "Come." He crooked a finger at him. Shen Chao concentrated. "Xiao." He suddenly streaked out. His right hand clenched into a fist, which he waved out. Boom, like a battle dragon rambling through the heavens, it exploded with a terrifying might. Ling Han did not move or panic. When this attack was close to blasting him, he suddenly shot out a punch. His stamina had long since soared to the level of the ascending origin tier. Though pure power could not possibly increase his battle prowess too much, the better his stamina, the faster the rate that Ling Han could attack at. Thus, though his attack came later, it was this punch that landed first, coming at an extraordinarily and incredibly fast rate. Pang! This punch greeted Shen Chao's incoming fist. The two fists collided, and an astonishing light instantly burst out. Then Shen Chao, whose body had been moving forwards, came to an abrupt stop, and bounced backwards at an even faster speed. Wah! Shen Chao dropped onto the ground, and with a slight tremor of his body, he spat out a mouthful of blood, but his vitality was blazing hotly. Though his internal organs had been shaken, his 5 organs had already been cultivated into mystery realms. A small tremor naturally could not harm him at all. However, his 6 organs had not been tempered yet, and that was why he had been slightly wounded with the tremor. For him, this blow could not be considered as even causing any harm at all. Yet others did not think that way. They were all exclaiming in shock, all of them unable to believe their eyes. Shen Chao was still no match for Ling Han. Crazy, this was really crazy. A 5th secret monarch tier actually could not match a 1st secret. Ling Han's expression was calm, and he once again crooked a finger at him, and said, "Hand over the cultivation resources that I should have gotten. Also, those that the 4 of them should have as well." He pointed at Mei Hua and the other people who had come from Saintly Origin Academy. Shen Chao was defiant. Why was he still no match for Ling Han? He obviously had not sensed that Ling Han had used any precious treasure, and this should be power that belonged solely to Ling Han, but was a monarch star really that powerful? Shen Chao hesitated, and decided to make a final attempt. He thought that Ling Han had surely used some kind of secret technique which allowed his battle prowess to soar for a short period of time, but it had to have a limited use. Ah! He roared and slammed towards Ling Han like a primitive beast. Ling Han humphed and used fists of fury, bursting out with a stronger attack. Pang! Shen Chao was sent flying for the third time, and crashed heavily into a stone pillar. Then, pang, pang, pang. He finally stopped after he broke through 7 stone pillars in one go. Blood was dripping from the corners of his lips. This time, his injuries were finally slightly serious. These were still superficial wounds, and did not affect his battle prowess at all, but Shen Chao could not bring himself to attack again. To have failed 3 times in succession, wasn't that enough already? Furthermore, the aura that Ling Han was presently exuding had not weakened or declined in the slightest, which meant that he still could execute a few more such powerful attacks. Shen Chao truly had no wish to seek his own humiliation further. He humphed, and then tossed 5 spatial god tools onto the ground. Then, he turned around and left. He truly did not have any further face to stay here any longer. The area was incredibly silent. Shen Chao was a 5th secret monarch tier, and was more or less the top elite in this camp, yet even he had been defeated by Ling Han. In that case, who else could be a match for this outsider? Ling Han, no, Han Lin, so awesome. Hun Yo clapped her hands. She ran over, her arms flung around Ling Han's neck, hanging from him like she was a big monkey. Ling Han smiled, and his right hand grabbed at the empty air. The 5 spatial god tools on the ground all fell into his hands. Then, he tossed 4 of them to Mei Hua and the others. Seeing this scene, the students of Saintly Origin Academy all looked motivated. Outside, all of them were prodigies, but after coming here, they were treated with extreme contempt by the locals, yet they indeed were much weaker in cultivation level, and were completely no match for the locals, so they could only lower their heads and behave. Now, with Ling Han striking out strongly, he had won their pride back, which naturally won their respect as well. Han Lin! Han Lin! Han Lin! It was unknown who was the first to yell out, but very soon, it developed into a tsunami wave of cries. Ling Han smiled slightly. Actually, there was another member of his alliance in the 17th camp, and that was Chang Zixin. However, because he had presently altered his appearance and aura, the latter did not have the slightest notion that they were one and the same. Hun Yo, the Empress, and the others had also altered their appearance and aura slightly. Let's go. He, the Empress, Hun Yo, the Rain Emperor, and Bewitching Maiden Rose set out on their way, heading towards the neutral zone. After they had exited the camp, Nye Hashan crossed his arms behind his back, looking at their receding backs from the distance. Lord Eternity has a high opinion of these few people, yet did not directly recruit them as his subordinates to further nurture them. Instead, he had them enlisted here to be polished further, and even instructed that I am not to interfere. It looks unreasonable, yet is also considered to be showing them more care. If that was not the case, as a great 9th heaven celestial king, how could he be so idle? Sigh, these little guys are really getting more and more restless. Why is it that they don't realize that with the sensitivity of the divine sense of celestial kings, how could every single thing that happened here possibly deceive them? With no sense of propriety, only fighting for favor and pushing out others, how could this kind of person be favored by the celestial kings? Ling Han and his group soon arrived at the outer circle of the neutral zone. This place was actually very dangerous. It would be the territory of the foreign realm after they passed through here, and the foreign realm would occasionally circle around the neutral zone to launch attacks against the celestial realm. This place is equivalent to a newly created heaven and earth. If our luck is good, we may be able to gain astonishing benefits. Chapter 2232. Poison Pills. Ling Han and the others entered into the neutral zone. Thankfully, because this zone was continuously widening, being close to covering the connecting point between the two realms, the foreign realm rarely launched offensives in the recent days. Only those below the ascending origin tier could come over here, so what was the point of fighting? The foreign realm had only brought up the motion of conducting a spar among the immortal palace tiers of the present generation, but the celestial realm had not agreed, fearing that this would again end in a terrible and serious humiliation. In any case, they could not do as they liked, could they? After entering into the neutral zone, the 5 of them relaxed. The regulations of this place were not recognized by the celestial realm. Even if a celestial king had come, he would very quickly become useless. Thus, they had completely no need to worry that the divine sense of celestial kings would extend inside here. That was an absolute impossibility. Their goal was to do a sweep of the creatures here. With the heaven and earth newly created, every creature was actually a supreme treasure. Ling Han and his group had always had good luck. Very soon, they encountered a creature that was unique to this place, one that had reached the Immortal Palace tier at that. The 5 of them charged forwards, and dealt with this creature that looked like a combination of a deer and goat in a few strokes. When they dissected it, as expected, there was a fruit tree being nurtured in its heart, and the tree had borne 3 large fruits, emanating a refreshing fragrance. Strange, the time this area has been formed should not reach 100 years, so how could such a powerful creature be nurtured here, as well as an astonishingly aged celestial medicine? The Rain Emperor looked at all corners of the heaven and earth, looking puzzled. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then said, "The secrets of the heaven and earth are not something that the present us can perceive." The Empress nodded, and remarked, "The regulations are subsidiary to the heaven and earth. Even the most mysterious regulations of time are only serving the heaven and earth. In that case, it would not be strange that creatures that are aged hundreds of millions of years old could appear here when only a short 100 years has passed in the outside world." Ling Han stowed this creature away. He had tried it. Consuming the flesh of this kind of beast could slightly replenish the power of regulation that had been expended. For him, this little bit of use was not effective, but for others, it would be of astonishing help. Ling Han understood it with some thought. It was through exhaustion that he had defeated Shen Chao. The flesh of this beast could replenish regulations, and it meant that others would be able to replicate his miracle. However, the power of regulation in the meat is limited, and could never compare to the energy stored in the Black Tower. Ling Han scrambled his brains. "But I can think of some way, and turn this meat into an alchemical pill, increasing its effects of recovery." "No. Hu Niu hurriedly grabbed Ling Han's thigh. "Niu wants to eat meat. Niu doesn't want to take alchemical pills." Bitter. Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Aside from eating, what else did this little girl think about? Play, of course, Hu Niu declared self-righteously. Ling Han and the others were amused. With such a high natural talent in cultivation, yet having a disposition so playful and voracious, she was probably the only one like this in this whole world. This was practically an exorbitant waste. If this little girl had been willing to spare more effort on cultivation, her accomplishments definitely would not have been limited to what she'd thus achieved. The 5 of them continued their journey, doing a sweep their whole way. However, there were pitifully few living creatures here, and there wasn't even a blade of grass on the barren ground. Now, the heaven and earth here were newly created. Each blade of grass and each tree were all sources, and were precious treasures. Of course, the creatures here were strange. It might be that they were all hybrids of animal and plant, and pure plants could not possibly appear. They swept onwards continuously for a month, and finally decided to return. Their leave was close to ending, and Nye Hashan would have a new mission to assign to them. However, before they returned, Ling Han ventured again to that valley from before, wanting to check on that creature underground. But he did not dare release his divine sense, because he discovered that the creature had strengthened a bit merely by slightly probing the surface. As expected, this heaven and earth was presently rapidly perfecting its regulations, and a stronger creature was about to come into existence in this space. Can we kill this creature? Ling Han and the others were all thinking this. Every single creature here was equivalent to a source beast, and even had its own celestial medicine, which had astonishing effects. Though a market had not yet formed at present, they were sure that as more people discovered the use of these creatures, their corpses, and the celestial medicine in their heart, would go for astronomical prices. By then, it would be difficult to hunt these creatures. This place had no lack of prodigies and elites. Hence, Ling Han and his group wanted to take advantage of this opening when the trend had not yet begun to take down that great ascending origin tier beast as soon as possible. The problem was that they were all only Immortal Palace tiers, so wasn't having designs on a great beast of ascending origin tier delusional. It is not that we are completely without a chance. The Empress planned in advance. This great beast has a very large weakness. It is kind of being suppressed already, and cannot move the slightest bit. At the very least, it cannot leave there. That's right. Ling Han nodded. He pondered. Right, though even our battle prowess combined together cannot match an ascending origin tier, I am a 4-star alchemist, so I can concoct 4-star alchemical pills. And 4-star alchemical pills are not just limited to tonics, but also a poison. He had never studied poison before, because there was absolutely no need, but now he had that kind of idea. After returning to camp, Ling Han immediately entered into the Black Tower, and began to concoct poison pills. Only 2 days had passed in the outside world, and Ling Han had already found a suitable poison. Thinking of how he had to conceal its aura, he could disguise it as an excellent celestial pill. However, before he had the time to purchase the ingredients for the poison, the 17th camp mobilized completely, heading to a location for training. This time, it was not the neutral zone. Instead, they retreated to the desolate plains behind Clear Heaven Pass. This was the second battlefield between the Celestial Realm and Foreign Realm. A great many elites of both Celestial Realm and Foreign Realm had died in battle here, and after countless years, the number of elites who had died was chilling. Their mission was very simple, and that was to roam around in the desolate plains. The time assigned was 1 month. Ling Han had walked over this desolate plain before, and knew that this was actually quite a frightening place. That powerful aura and pressure it exuded were really too strong. Moreover, they were not taking the same route they had taken before. Previously, the path that Ling Han and the others had walked had actually been deliberately opened up, and a great number of corpses of elites had already been moved away, but the place that they now had to roam was a region that had not been dealt with at all. Nye Hashan still divided them into 20 small teams, and they were to move separately. Shan Chao humphed, and moved independently while bringing the 6 natives with him, ignoring Ling Han and the other disciples of Saintly Origin Academy altogether. Ling Han was also pleased with the situation. What the eye didn't see, the heart didn't fret over. With that kind of havoc, the conflict between the natives and outsiders would probably become bigger and bigger. He couldn't help but sigh. The invasion of the Foreign Realm was close at hand, but there were still a great many people that had focused their energy on internal strife, wasting time and energy for nothing. However, he smiled bitterly. The most useless should be those 3 heavenly Venerates, right? Otherwise, if they were willing to interfere, the fighting of Clear Heaven Pass would definitely not be so critical. If he could recall how he had been the victim of an attack from the Zhouwu Heavenly Venerate at the Timestream, he would probably feel even sicker at heart. He was not in a good mood, and was silent as he walked ahead of them, and Mei Hua and the others naturally would not dare say anything either, so the atmosphere appeared extremely depressed. While they were walking, they heard cracking sounds ring out. A white skeleton had popped up out of who knew where. It was 9 meters tall and strangely shaped. Words could not describe its exact appearance. Chapter 22:33. Failure. This white skeleton. It seemed like the creator's hand had slipped when he had been creating new beings. He had wanted to remold this thing that had been half-created, but after he kneaded it a few times, he changed his mind again, and decided to give it life. Thus, it was ugly and strange, and words could not be used to describe just what exactly it looked like. Ling Han swept an eye over it. The bones of this skeleton were very disorderly, clearly having been pieced together from the bones of a considerable number of different corpses. Be careful, young Master Han, Lu Zhen reminded him. These skeletons are manifested from the corpses of elites from the Foreign Realm, and have a sliver of intent that has not been destroyed by the heaven and earth yet. Though those with higher cultivation levels have already been wiped out by the Celestial Kings, they are still relatively powerful. Ling Han nodded. Since Nye Hashan assigned them to train here, he was sure that this skeleton should reach the Immortal Palace tier, or rather, there would be Immortal Palace tier skeletons appearing. This monster was not a living creature, and its cultivation level could not be distinguished. Only in battle would they find out the exact details of its battle prowess. Ling Han strode forwards, approaching this skeleton. Hiss hiss! This skeleton released a strange sound, then suddenly waved its arm, and bones about 3 meters long slammed towards Ling Han. Ling Han moved. Pong! He exchanged a blow with this skeleton. That skeleton's figure was immediately sent backwards from the impact, and Ling Han's body trembled, feeling a sharp stabbing pain in his eyes, as if blood was about to drip from his eyes. He couldn't help but feel surprised. The battle prowess of the skeleton was actually not very strong, only slightly stronger than Fourth Secret, But when it struck, its attacks carried the violent air of this place, dealing a considerable blow to Ling Han's divine sense. No wonder Nyehashan had told them to come train here. It would indeed be very effective for training purposes here. The white skeleton boasted extreme toughness, and immediately brandished another arm to slam Ling Han. Ling Han leaped, and struck consecutively, endlessly barraging the white skeleton. Pang, pang, pang. Under his endless wave of attacks, multiple cracks appeared on the bones on the skeleton, just like a spider's web. Huang, with another heavy punch, the skeleton finally crumbled, its bones falling all over the ground. Yet Ling Han immediately fell into a seated position. Though he had gained victory, the aura that the skeleton had carried in its attacks was endlessly blasting towards him. Some had already entered his body, and was presently causing havoc within. He had to expel it immediately, or it would become a huge problem. It took him a day and a night to finally expel this murderous aura from within his body. This was not the regulation of slaughter, but rather the defiance, anger, and other emotions left by cultivators of the foreign realm after their death. It could be fatal. Ling Han wiped away the sweat on his forehead, yet discovered to his surprise that his cultivation level had actually increased slightly in just this one day and night. At first, he was confused, but then realization dawned on him. These elites of the foreign realm were indeed extremely strong, concealing great power in their bodies. Even after death, this power had not completely dispersed, and ground by the heaven and earth here, this power had become something that could be absorbed by the cultivators of this realm. However, it was not just anyone who could easily absorb this power. It also carried the murderous aura of elites from the foreign realm within, and one had to be able to bear the barrage of this murderous aura to be able to absorb this power. As much as possible, kill these skeletons. It will be very beneficial, Ling Han said. Mei Hua and the others all nodded. Actually, they had long since known that killing the skeletons here would be very beneficial, but they had been following Shen Chao's lead previously, so what chance would they have had to move? Any rare skeleton they encountered would be divided among the natives. They continued onwards, and their luck wasn't too bad. Less than half a day later, they encountered another skeleton, and this one was an earth soul tier at that. This kind of skeleton contained too little power within them, and Ling Han couldn't be bothered, so he simply had Mei Hua and the others move instead. They successfully destroyed this skeleton, and obtained the benefits within. Ling Han laid out a formation around them, and then left by himself to search for new skeletal monsters. In this 1 month, he had destroyed 14 skeletons in total, but there were only 8 among them that were at the Immortal Palace tier, while the other 6 were dividing soul tiers. At first, Ling Han had not wanted to kill them, but these skeletons kept bothering him, so he could only move to kill all of them. It was better than nothing, and he might as well take them. His cultivation level had also increased visibly, reaching the middle stage of the first secret. This kind of progress rate in the Immortal Palace tier could be considered astonishingly rapid. He returned to meet up with the rest. When all members of the 17th camp had arrived, whether it was Huang, the Rain Emperor, the Empress or the others, they had all improved clearly. Unfortunately, there were limited numbers of skeletons here, and they needed a very long time before they would be nurtured back into existence again, while there were too many people from Clear Heaven Pass, so they needed to take their turns in batches. It was said that only a few limited people had the privilege to endlessly train in this place. For example, Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, Hong Huang, and Jia Lan, the 4 supreme monarch tiers from the Saintly Origin Academy, as well as the 2 monarch stars from the borders, A Li Na and Xing Chenyue. Logically, Ling Han and the Rain Emperor should also be able to get such treatment, but the Eternity Celestial King who had previously said that he would take care of them seemed to have forgotten them completely, and they could only cultivate just like the others, which restricted the progress rate of their cultivation level. Would a Celestial King be forgetful? Probably not. In that case, the fact that the Eternity Celestial King had not raised the positions of the 2 of them should have some other meaning. The poison has finally been completed. Ling Han smiled slightly. He, the Empress, and the others entered once more into the neutral zone, and began to release the poison from that cave mouth. However, on the outside, these 7 poison pills were all shining brilliantly, filled with a refreshing fragrance, appearing completely like celestial pills. To disguise the effects of the poison pills, Ling Han had really gone to much effort. We must succeed. I spent countless of my star stones on this. Ling Han felt a slight heartache. Even if it was poison pills, they were still 4-star pills, so their cost was naturally extremely high. Ling Han threw the poison pills in, and as a sucking force surged out, the 7 poison pills were immediately sucked into the cave, instantly disappearing without a trace. The 5 of them then sat beside this cave, waiting for the poison to take effect. However, the ground suddenly trembled after a while, as if an earthquake was happening. Yet the 5 of them did not panic, but were instead overjoyed. This meant that the poison pills had taken effect, and that was why that powerful existence would be rampaging around. It was close to death. However, after another while, the tremors stopped, and a frightening aura surged out of the cave mouth, filled with vitality and shockingly strong. Oh no, not only did the monster not die, it has instead become even stronger. Could it be a venomous beast that does not fear poison, but would instead turn poison into its own power, and increase its cultivation level? Ling Han and the others were all astounded. This was greatly beyond their expectations. They had gone out for wool, but come back shorn. No. Ling Han immediately shook his head. Poison is called poison because of regulations. When one gets to the bottom of the matter, there is not much difference between the regulations of poison and slaughter, time and space. The Empress deduced many things from this, and immediately understood Ling Han's thought process, and said, but in this neutral zone, regulations have been broken, and the regulation of poison could possibly become regulation of wood, which is instead filled with powerful vitality and life. So when we used our poison pill to kill this monster with poison, not only did it have no effect, it instead caused it to become even stronger. Huang clapped her hands once and declared, then, we will use a tonic to poison it to death. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.